Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became the Sea Dragon Part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story at 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Third POV. Izuku's friends were about to resume their meal after Izumi interrupted them, but suddenly, the UA emergency alarms started to ring all over the cafeteria and possibly all over the school. Security 3 has been broken. All students evacuate to the building. The intercom voice announced and kept repeating the phrase. The Izuku squad started to get nervous as they saw the whole cafeteria panic in an unnatural chaos. Students started getting up on their seats and headed straight for the exit in a panicked state. "Excuse me, what is Security 3? Momo asked an upperclassman that ran past them. "It means that someone broke into campus. This has never happened in 3 years since I have been here. You all should hurry," he said to them as he ran off to the exit as well. "Guys, stay close. Don't separate from each other," Izuku instructed them as they nodded. They started to walk to the exit but was overwhelmed with the number of students trying to exit the cafeteria. They started showing each other and pushing one another as they tried to get out of there. Izuku squad wasn't doing good as well, as they were being crushed by the students. They held tightly on one another, trying not to separate and be crushed by the mob of students. "This is chaotic," Kaminari said as Hitoshi tried shielding him from the elbows and shoves from other students. "This isn't proper behavior for UA students," Momo commented as she was pushed to the side. "Momo," they all said in unison as Shoto helped her up. "Who even broke into this DMNF school?" Katsuki shouted as he was suddenly shoved as well. Izuku then pushed the other students away as he made his way to the glass windows to see who had the guts to infiltrate UA High School. He struggled to make his way to the windows as elbows kept flying to his face. Eventually, he reached the glass windows and saw that the ones that infiltrated the school were the media and press from earlier. He saw that his dad and Papa were trying to calm them down and were trying to make them leave the school. Shota looked annoyed as hell and Hizashi really wanted to use his quirk to scare them away. Izuku then made his way back to his friends to inform them of who infiltrated the school. "Guys, it's the press from this morning. They got through to the UA barriers. They're the ones that triggered the alarm," Izuku told them as they groaned at the press for causing all of this unnecessary chaos. "What are we gonna do, bro? We need to tell all of them to calm down," Tetsu said. "I have an idea," Izuku said as everyone turned to look at him. "Momo, I need you to make me a megaphone." Momo nodded as she started to unbutton her uniform shirt and started to create the megaphone. Jiro and Mina got in front of her and blocked her from unwanted eyes as the guys turned to look away. "Here." Momo then handed the megaphone to Izuku as he smiled and thanked her. "Kaken, launch me to the front of the crowd." Katsuki nodded as he grabbed Izuku's arm through him with his explosion and sent him flying to the front of the raging mob. He used his water arms and grabbed the ceiling beams and held himself up. The other students looked at him in awe as he held on to dear life at the ceiling beam. He then turned on the megaphone and began to speak. "Everyone calm down," Izuku shouted into the megaphone as everyone stopped moving and looked up to him, dangling in the ceiling. "Everyone, it is just the press from this morning. Look out into the windows. They have somehow broke into UA and bypassed the UA barriers. There are no villains and please calm your nerves." The students then sighed a relief, but Izuku wasn't finished yet. "Don't you all think it's a little bit pathetic of you all panicking over nothing? I mean, we are at UA, one of the most secured places in all of Japan, not to mention the number of pro heroes that are here all the time, because of the fact that there are teachers. Now listen up, get to your classrooms in an orderly fashion and try not to shove, hit, or elbow one of your fellow classmates. Now, are we all clear?" "Hi," the students all said in unison as they were a little bit frightened by Izuku. "Good. Now move it and get to class." The students then nodded and walked to their class. Izuku sighed and swung back to his friends using his water arms. He was a little bit impressed with himself that he could command a whole crowd of chaotic students. "Way to go, class rep," 𝗵𝗃𝗻𝗲 said as he patted Izuku on his shoulders. Yeah, it was quite impressive. Shoto commented as Izuku rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. They all then headed to class as they saw the hallway cleared up and was now easy to walk through without being shoved by other students. When they arrived, Izuku was complimented by the whole class on how he handled the situation and calmed everyone down. They also commented on how cool Izuku was when he told the students off and how he humiliated Izumi that was being rude to them back at the cafeteria. Izuku thanked them all as he stepped onto the platform with Momo beside him. They were then about to pick the rest of the class officers, which was a whole nother rodeo as the class erupted in yells again, wanting to be part of the class officers. After a whole hour of electing, Shota entered the classroom. First off, before we start, I would like to thank Izuku for handling the brats. You did good, kid. Shota said in a monotone voice and expressionless face, but Izuku knew that he was proud of him. The class clapped for him again as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Now, for today's heroics class, it's decided that All Might, another teacher, and me will be teaching all of you problem children. He informed the class as they gasped. Sir, what will we be doing? Zero asked as Shota revealed a card that said Rescue Training. Anything from disasters to shipwrecks, we will be conducting a rescue training lesson, Shota announced as the whole class became excited for their lesson. For this training, you can choose to wear your costume or not because some of them will limit your movements, he said as he pressed a button to reveal their hero suitcases. The training area is a little bit far, so we'll go by bus. Start preparing. The class then got up and took their respective cases and changed into them. Izuku got into his hero costume and made sure that his blue gourd was filled to the brim with water that he can control. They were now all outside and were waiting for the bus to arrive and pick them up. The Izuku squad were with each other and were happily conversing with one another on how excited they were for the rescue training. Hey, dude, why do you carry that big butt gourd around your back all the time? Kaminari questioned Izuku. Well, it's 'cause I can't produce the water from New York hands or anything. That's why I carry around water with me, so that I could use my quirk. I can however control the water in the air, but it would be too time-consuming. Izuku said to him as he nodded in understanding. So that's why you carry your gourd around. Mina said as Izuku nodded. Isn't that heavy? How big is that thing? Kirishima questioned. Why don't you try to carry it? Izuku told him as he placed the gourd on Kirishima's back. Immediately, his feet started to give in due to the weight that the gourd had. He was struggling to carry the big butt gourd as the others laughed at how hard he was trying. Izuku then took his gourd off Kirishima's back and placed it back on his own. Man, that was like super heavy. That's so manky of you to carry that thing. Kirishima exclaimed as Izuku let out a giggle. Soon, the bus arrived and Izuku, as the class representative, instructed everyone to get inside the bus in an orderly fashion. The class got inside and their teacher got in as well. They then headed to their destination to conduct the rescue training. While waiting, they talked to one another. Izuku, you know that I say everything that comes to my mind, right? Tsu said to Izuku as Izuku nodded. How come it seems like you know Yagi-san personally? Do you know her? Tsu questioned as Izuku tensed up a bit. Izuku was then hesitant to tell them the truth. He looked at Katsuki and Hitoshi, and they looked at him and gave him the look that said, it's up to you. He then looked at his dad and he had the same look. He then took a deep breath before he answered. Do you all know that kid that went missing and was assumed that committed suicide 2 years ago because of neglect and abuse? Izuku asked and they all nodded. He was the son of All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗲, right? And Yagi-san was his sister. Kendo said as Izuku nodded. Well, that son is me, he said with a weak smile. What? They all screamed in shock. But the picture of their son had blonde hair and green eyes. However, you have blue hair and blue eyes. Ida pointed out as the rest nodded. Well, let's just say that I had a makeover when I went away for 2 years. Izuku said to them as they all nodded in understanding. So, that's why you hated her. Tsu said bluntly as everyone's sweat dropped. Anyways, where is she? I haven't seen her since that cafeteria incident. Jiro questioned as everyone wondered where she was as well, before Shota spoke up. She has been moved to the General Studies program after the stunt she pulled at the cafeteria. Bullying and discrimination is not tolerated in this school. She also was already on thin ice with Principal 𝗍𝗬 because of what happened 2 years ago. They all then nodded as they agreed with their decision. They all were not really comfortable with her when she first entered the class, and now she was absolutely hated by the entirety of the class after she insulted some of them back in the cafeteria. Good riddance, we don't have to deal with that she-demon again. I was about to bring some holy water to possibly exorcise her and bring her back to whatever part of hell she came from. Izuku said sassily as the whole bus laughed at his joke. They then noticed the bus came to a full stop and 𝗳𝗍𝗃 told them that they arrived. They exited the bus and was met with a humongous building that could fit at least thousands of people inside. They all got extremely pumped up and were even more excited to conduct their rescue training, unknowing to them that this will be the first time that they will ever encounter real villains, as a sinister villain was plotting something in the shadows that was about to commence. Third POV. The class exited the bus and marveled at the sight of the very big building that was shaped in a dome. The whole class stared at awe and were greeted by their special teacher. It was the space hero, 𝗬𝗏. She waved them a hello as 𝗬𝗏𝗃 started fangirling. Oh my gosh! You the space hero, 𝗬𝗏. You're one of the best rescue heroes in all over Japan. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 said, ecstatic to see her idol. That is correct. I am 𝗬𝗏. And today you are here to conduct your hero rescue training, she said as she gestured the class to follow her inside. They were even more amazed for what was in store for them inside. There were multiple zones that depicted different kinds of disasters that ranged from shipwrecks to natural ruins. Everyone was excited to finally get their rescue training started. Wow, this place is amazing, Kirishima commented. It's like Universal Studio of Japan, Kaminari added. Shipwrecks, landslides, fires, windstorms, and many more. I built this training center to prepare for any known accidents and disasters. It is called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. Pro Hero 13 said, introducing her building. So it really is USJ, the whole class thought with deadpan expressions. Aizawa then approached 13 and asked her where All Might was. She told him that he used most of his time when he fought a couple of villains in the city and is now resting. 𝗳𝗍𝗃 groaned as he thought to himself to be cautious in the meantime. After the media broke into the UA barriers, Principal 𝗍𝗬 figured out that someone must have disintegrated the wall and caused the media to walk into campus. 𝗍𝗬 had a feeling that something might happen and told Aizawa about this. That is why 𝗳𝗍𝗃 is being more cautious today. Now, before we all start, I would like to say a couple of words. As you all may know, my quirk is called Black Hole. I can SCK in anything and turn it into ash in a matter of seconds. My quirk is helpful for rescue work, but it's also a power that can easily kill people. With that in mind, I want you all to remember that you all have quirks that can easily kill people with one mistake. Let that nit bring you down, for we are here at USJ, so that you all can learn how to use your quirk to rescue people. Now that is all, thank you for listening. Number 13 finished her speech as she gave a bow. Everyone then cheered for her lovely and inspiring speech with roaring claps and inspired faces. They were now even more pumped to do the rescue training. Now that it's done, let's go and dash. 𝗳𝗍𝗃 was caught off when suddenly, the lights of the USJ building started to flicker and a dark purple portal appeared in the middle of Central Plaza. A mob of villains came out from them as Aizawa frowned at the sight of them. He placed his goggles on and turned to see the frightful faces of his students. Are those fake villains? Kaminari asked as he turned to his teacher, shook his head no. 13, protect the kids and get out of here now. Communications are down, I can't contact 𝗍𝗬𝗃. I'll handle them all and you all get out of here. 𝗳𝗍𝗃 instructed as Izuku and Hitoshi protested. Oh, Dad, you can't fight all of them, they're too many. Plus half of them have mutant quirks. Izuku said in distress. He's right. Your quirk isn't suitable for group battles. Hitoshi added as their father turned to them. You can't be a hero if you're a one-trick pony. Now go and leave this to me, he said as he jumped into Central Plaza. Kids, we need to get out of here now. 13 instructed as they all followed her lead, much to Izuku and Hitoshi's dismay. They all races their way to the exit as their teacher defeated villain after villain for the chance of having them escape this whole situation. They were about to leave through the doors when suddenly, a mist of inky black and purple appeared. Nice to meet you all, we are the League of Villains. We are here to have All Might, the symbol of peace, take his last breath. Class 1A, along with 13, were all scared and started to tense up. I heard that All Might was supposed to be here, but has there been a change of plan? Well, besides that issue, I'm here to separate you all. The Black Mist declared. What's your name? Hitoshi asked using his quirk. The mist was about to answer him but was interrupted when he was met with Katsuki's explosion and Kirishima's hardened punch. It caused a massive explosion, directly on the villain. You idiots! He was about to answer me and I would have brainwashed him. Hitoshi said angrily as Katsuki and Kirishima looked at one another. They realized they F up. Nice try, students. Even if you're all still young, you all will become a liability in the future. Now time to scatter you all into your dooms. The mist started to envelope them all. An unknown force seems to be the students in as they try their best to hold themselves together. Ida managed to push Uraraka and Kendo out of the warp and Shoji was able to hold himself down along with Kodai, Tokoyami, and Siro. The rest were unluckily warped away as the black mist that enveloped them suddenly disappeared. The class looked around and saw that more than half of them were gone. Izuku, Katsuki, Kirishima, Momo, Shoto, Hitoshi, Jiro, Kaminari, Mina, Tetsu, Tsuyu, Ojiro and Toru were all gone. What did you do to them? Uraraka shouted at the black mist. He chuckled slightly before answering her. They're scattered all over this building and into the zones where villains are waiting for them and are ready to kill them off one by one. He said as everyone looked petrified. Everyone, stand behind me. 13 instructed as they did what she told them to do. She then used her black hole quirk and started the mist man in. It was working until 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 used her quirk against her and warped her black hole to herself that made her use her quirk on her. So many hers. Tongue sticking out. Suit then ripped apart as she was heavily wounded and had a hole on her back. The students rushed to her aid as they squat down to check on her. 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 just looked at them as he chuckled in front of them. Ida, you need to escape from here and warn the teachers at UA of this attack. Kendo said to Ida. You need to get out of here and run as fast as you can to UA? What? I can't leave you all here with these villains. Ida said back as Uraraka slapped him suddenly. Listen here, Ida-kun. Half of our class is not here and could be in serious trouble. We need the help of the pros at school and get them here to help us. Uraraka said with pleading eyes as her whole face looked extremely worried for her friends that were warped away. Ida contemplated, but agreed to the plan. He started to charge his engine and started running in blazing speed, passing the villain. You are not going anywhere, 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he started to stretch his misty body to catch up to Ida's speed. Ida was getting worried if he was able to make it in time and escape the building. With the needed strength to open the door forcefully, and the sight of the villain gaining up on him, his chance of escape was pretty slim. A black mist then suddenly appeared in front of him, and he was almost in. But Shoji then jumped in front of him and hugged the mist with his 6 arms, covering it completely. Hurry, Ida, Shoji told him as he continued to run. He reached the door and saw that 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 was now gaining up on him. He used all of his force to open the door as he saw that 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 was getting closer and closer. Uraraka then saw the metal piece that was in the misty body's neck. She then thought that it must be attached to his body, meaning that he had a physical body and he is not just made out of black and purple smoke. Uraraka then touched it with her hands and activated her quirk. I don't know how this is possible, but if he's wearing this then he has a physical body. Now float, you villain. She shouted as she made 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 float in the air, giving Ida more time to open the door. I'm not letting you escape. 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 then stretched his body once more to reach Ida. You ain't going nowhere, Siro said as he taped the metal piece with his quirk. Kendo then grabbed the tape with her big hands and grabbed a hold of it tightly. He then pulled 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 back and started spinning him around her with much force. Get away from here, she said as she threw her with the force and momentum from her spin. 𝗬𝗏𝗁𝗃 was then launched away from then and into Central Plaza as Iida managed to escape USG. 𝗬𝗏𝗁𝗃 cursed himself for not warping him away and letting him escape. I will not disappointed you class 1A. I will get help. Iida shouted to himself as he ran as fast as he could back to UA. The students that evaded the warp attack have successfully beaten their enemy. But what's to say for those that have been warped away? Izuku, Tsuyu and Hitoshi in the shipwreck zone, surrounded by nothing but water and villains that dwell below it. Shoto and Toru, trapped in the landslide zone, surrounded by heinous villains. In the mountain zone, Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari fight for their lives as they have no escape as their routes were blocked off by the villains and mountainous walls. Heavy winds and heavy storms surround Mina and Tetsu as they battle the sheer weather to survive against the villains' attacks. Ojiro fell into the raging fire as he was transported into the fire zone, surrounded by villains with fire-based quirks. And lastly, Katsuki and Kirishima, trapped inside a fallen building in the ruin zone as they are being cornered by numerous villains. How ironic this day had become. A day of them supposedly to train about rescuing people has turned into them rescuing themselves. How the tables have turned for our heroes in training. Third POV. Izuku suddenly felt himself falling from the sky. He looked down to see that we was going to fall into the water as he noticed that he was in the shipwreck zone. He positioned himself to land on his feet. He then hit the surface of the water with a big splash, landing gracefully with a squat while his right foot extended to the side. He was walking on water. He looked to see if anyone landed alongside him, but instead a villain found him. The villain swam below him and was about to bite Izuku's feet off while swimming upwards towards him. Izuku felt the vibrations from the water below him and flipped backwards, dodging the attack. He then looked up and saw Hitoshi falling and crashed into the surface of the water. He ran to save him from the shark villain as he saw the movements from under the water. He looked like he was too late, but suddenly, someone dived into the water and jumped back up into a ship with Hitoshi. He looked closer to see that it was Tsu with Hitoshi wrapped around her long tongue. He sighed a relief and ran to the ship as he dodges villain attacks left and right. He then jumped up into the ship with the other. Izuku, I'm glad that you are okay. Tsu said to him as Izuku nodded. How about Hitoshi? Is he okay? Izuku asked as he saw his brother's arm raised up and made a thumbs up, signaling he was okay. Izuku sighed in relief as he stood up from the ship and looked around to see many villains surrounding them. From what he could tell, they all had water-based quirks, which mean the shipwreck zone is the perfect place for them. Izuku, do you have a plan or something? You have that big brain of yours, then use it. Hitoshi told him as Izuku grumbled at him. Just be quiet, okay? I'm trying to think because things aren't adding up. Izuku told them as they both were confused. What do you mean? Tsu asked. Well, for starters, all of the villains here have water-based quirks and this is the perfect place for them to ambush us. But I don't understand why they would put me and Tsu in this zone of our quirks are water-based as well. Tsu gasped lightly as Hitoshi squinted his eyes to think. That is true. If they were trying to kill us, then me and Izuku-kun should be in the fire zone where we are much more weaker. Tsu said. That's right. My theory is that they don't know our quirks and that is why. They're not climbing up on this boat since they're being cautious. I suggest that we keep our quirks hidden for the meantime and formulate a plan. The other two nodded as they all huddled up together. They started planning and halfway, they were interrupted when they suddenly felt the boat sinking into the water. They looked to see the boat was split in half by a villain that had a similar quirk to Izuku. Izuku grumbled as he continued to formulate the plan with the others. They nodded and approved of Izuku's plan. Okay then, let's get this show on the road. Izuku said as all three of them stood up. They all leaped into the water to engage with the enemies. Izuku turned his arms into water hands and grabbed both Tsuyu and Hitoshi. He then absorbed some water from the zone and made extra limbs out of them, and has now 2 extra water tentacles. Get them, a villain said as they swam towards the young heroes in training. Okay, everyone, let's do this, Izuku said with a grin on his face. The two responded as they started fighting in the water. Izuku had some sort of an advantage since he can walk on water, and that is why he grabbed 𝗬𝗪 and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 with his water arms to improve their mobility. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 readied his capture bands as well as 𝗬𝗪, who was ready for the villains. Villains started using their water quirks and shot them towards the students. Izuku moved around the water and dodged them while making sure his team wasn't hit. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 shot back and used his capture bands and wrapped them around the villain. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then brought the villain closer to him and asked him a random question. Not knowing what 𝗵𝗃𝗃's quirk was, he answered and he was then brainwashed into 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗏. Izuku, I got one. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 told him, and he threw the villain towards his brother. Izuku caught the villain mid-air with his water arms and started to wrap the villain with water in the shape of a sphere that bound him to his neck down, leaving his head open. The sphere prison then floated on top of Izuku with a chain that connected the sphere to Izuku's gourd, making sure he doesn't go anywhere. Nice, Operation Sphere Prison is a success. Izuku told then as they gave him a smile. Now, let's round the rest up. Ryukai. The other two said in unison. Izuku then started running towards the villains as they ran towards them as well. Izuku subdued the villains with his water arms that he used to knock them out cold. He then wrapped them around his sphere prison and connected them with a water chain that was attached to his gourd. 𝗬𝗪 wrapped multiple villains with her tongue while being carried by Izuku's extra limbs. She then brought them to 𝗵𝗃𝗃, who will ask them a random question and have them be brainwashed and then be imprisoned in one of Izuku's spheres. This strategy went on for a little while until they were all able to capture the villains into Izuku's sphere. Half of them were brainwashed and half of them were knocked out cold, and won't be coming back to consciousness anytime soon. Good work, team. Now let's head back to our class and make sure that they're okay. Izuku said as the other nodded. Izuku then shaped the waters and created a water beast that 𝗬𝗵𝗃 had taught him during their 10-month training. The water beast that was huge and bulky and walked on twos, had a mind of its own but would always follow Izuku's instructions and command. He told the water beast to hold on to the water chains and make sure that the villains don't escape. The water beast nodded and sat down in an angel sitting position on the surface of the water and held on to the floating spheres. Izuku laughed a little since the water beast looked like a little kid holding balloons. The beast was adorable. They then headed to the shore and were about to head back to their class, but they first made a stop to check on Shoyuta at Central Plaza. They then witness an horrific scene. In the landslide zone, Shoto and Toru are surrounded by villains with mutated quirks. They jumped out of their hiding spots and tried to kill them with their quirks. Shoto grabbed Toru by her arm and used his ice to slide away and dodge their attacks. Shoto looked beside him to see if Toru was okay but saw that her floating gloves were no longer there. He looked around and saw that some of the villains were being punched by an unseeable force. Shoto smirked a little and figures that it was Toru using her invisibility quirk. What the F is going on? A villain shouted as he was suddenly punched in the face. Take that, villain, Toru said as he kicked the villain in his groin. The male villains and Shoto winced as they somehow felt the pain that the guy was experiencing. Toru kept attacking as Shoto joined in and burned and froze some of them. Shoto eventually saw more of them popping out of the place and he called for Toru. Hagakure, get behind me now, Shoto told her as she did so. Shoto then stomped his right foot on the ground as a trail of ice made its way to the villains and froze them solid. Their bodies covered in ice, shivering as they tried to break free. Awesome. You're so powerful, Todoroki-san, Toru said, praising his abilities as he thanked her. They then made their way down as Shoto had questions that he wanted to be answered. Before warping away, he saw a villain with blue hair that looked like to be the leader. Not to mention the muscular monster that had a beak for a mouth and an exposed brain. As they made their way to face a mutant villain, another villain surprised attacked them and was holding a pointy spear, aiming for Shoto's head. He dodges by moving his head to the side and grabbed the spear with his right arm and froze it and the villain. He then snapped the villain's weapon in half and made him crash to the ground, still frozen. You all need to learn that numbers won't mean that you will win automatically, Shoto said as he faced a villain with a green line strip in his eyes. If you all stay here like this, you all will receive hypothermia and your body tissues will slowly die, resulting to your deaths, he said as the villains started cowering in fear as small drips of tears escaped their eyes. I want to be a hero, so I would like to avoid doing such a thing. I will let you all free if you tell me how you're going to kill All Might. On what basis can you accomplish that goal? Tell me your plans. Shoto said, threatening them as they told him their plans. He widened his eyes as he told Toru that they'll be leaving. He melted the ice around the villains but still knocked them out cold. They then made their way to the entrance to warn the class of their plans. Little do they know that the weapon that the villains are going to use to kill All Might has already made a move as it started to kill their teacher slowly, pummeling him half to death, and it was all right in front of his kids. Third POV. In the mountain zone, Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari are fending off villains that were attacking them. They were completely surrounded and backed up into the mountain wall. All escaped routes were blocked by villains as they were eyeing the students, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We need to defend ourselves and defeat them all, Momo said to them as she created a bow staff. You're right, we'll be dead meat if we don't do something, Jiro said as Kaminari tensed up and looked slightly panicked. What do you mean? There's so many of them, he shouted. Jiro, have this. Momo then created a katana for Jiro that she gladly took. The villains then started running towards the students, ready to kill them in cold blood. Many of them had rock-based quirks, perfect for the mountainous terrain of the mountain zone. A villain approached Momo and she hit him with her bow staff right in his gut. She then planted her bow staff to the ground and performed a flying kick to his chest, landing gracefully back to the ground. She then threw the bow staff into another villain and hit him in his head. Jiro used the katana that Momo gave her and started hitting the enemies left and right. A villain swung at her but she quickly dodges by rolling down to the ground and then to the side. She then low-kicked him and made him fall to the ground, before kicking him in the groin, knocking him out unconscious. Kaminari was not being helpful and was instead running away from the villains. A villain tried punching him before he ducked down and continued to fled. Jiro noticed him not contributing to the team and got extremely annoyed. Oi, Kaminari! Do something to help us win against these bozos, she said while smacking a villain in the face with her katana. I can't. I can just surround myself in electricity, I can't control it. If I do, I'll shock all of you, Kaminari said in a panicked voice as he dodges a punch from a villain again. Jiro noticed the hordes of villains that were chasing after Kaminari. She then planted her earphone jacks to the ground and played the sound of her heartbeat. It then sent vibrations to the ground and started to crumble the villain's footing. The villains then fell to the dirt and rocks. Oh, come on. Can't you do something? Jiro asked as Kaminari shook his head no vigorously. I'm useless right now. I can't contact anyone because of the communication being jammed. I'm relying on you all since I can't help, Kaminari said frantically as Jiro got annoyed even more. Aren't you a man? Then be a human stun gun, Jiro said as she kicked Kaminari to a villain. Kaminari accidentally hugged the villain and activated his electricity quirk. He looked surprised as he saw that he was electrifying the villain. AMD was stunning him like a taser. Oh my gosh guys. I'm actually really strong. You guys can rely on me now, he announced happily as another villain appeared. Jiro saw the villain stretched his arms thin, holding on a giant boulder. He was about to smash the rock into Kaminari when Jiro stopped him. She inserted her earphone jacks into her speaker that was built into her costume. She then sent her heartbeat vibrations to the villain that broke the boulder he was holding into pieces. The villain was too late to realize as he accidentally placed his stretched arm and touched Kaminari, resulting to him being shocked as well. Nice, Jiro commented before she was caught off guard when a villain jumped towards her with two bladed weapons. Jiro was ready for her fate when Momo saved her by creating a capture net from her palm and launched it towards the villain. The villain was caught midair by her net as he struggled to break free. Unluckily, he fell to the ground due to the capture net and was shocked by Kaminari. Stay focused everyone, Momo reminded them as they both nodded. Jiro then plugged her earphone jacks back to her speakers and sent another wave of her heartbeat in max volume, deafening the crowd of villains. Momo was kicking a villain in his side that approached Jiro from behind, and Kaminari kept touching the villains and shocking them. It's ready, Momo said and left Jiro confused. It takes time to create something this big. Her back then started glowing a glowing pink light and then burst open, revealing a huge sheet that covered both her and 𝗂𝗲𝗄. The villains looked at the giant sheet of blanket and was confused by it. They were mistaking it for a type of shield, but in fact it was something else. It's an insulation sheet which is 100 millimeters thick, 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃. Momo said as 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 smiled, knowing what exactly to do. With that sheet on you both, I can go all out. Be shocked, villains. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 announces as he sent a very high voltage of electricity to the ground, and shocked all of the villain in the area. When Momo no longer heard the noise of 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃's electricity, she peeped out and looked to see that all of the villains were defeated. 𝗂𝗲𝗄 then screamed after seeing Momo's torn costume. She reassured her that it was fine and made another copy of her costume. When they left the sheet, they laughed a little at 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃's state. He short-circuited from overusing his quirk and made him dumber than he already was. But Momo suddenly felt uneasy. 𝗂𝗲𝗄, can you use your earphone jacks to make sure that all of the villains are defeated? Momo asked as 𝗂𝗲𝗄 nodded. 𝗂𝗲𝗄 then planted her earphone jacks to the ground and started listening for vibrations. He then opened her widened eyes before sending a vibration to the ground. There, below the ground, revealed a hiding villain. Momo gasped as she was correct. The villain was surprised that he was found and then sent a bolt of electricity at them. Momo grabbed the insulation sheet and used it as a shield. She then made a bow staff and threw it like a spear towards the villain, but he quickly dodges. But Momo hid her actual plan and launched a capture net to the villain that had his guard down. It caught him and she started running towards the captured villain. She created a bow staff and smashed it to his head, making him go unconscious. They all then sighed a relief as they were now sure that all of the villains have been defeated. 𝗂𝗲𝗄 dragged the short-circuit 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 to where Momo was as he was still in his jamming way mode. I think that this villain is what caused for all communications to be jammed. Let's go back to the entrance and regroup with the rest of the class. Momo said as 𝗂𝗲𝗄 nodded, dragging 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 with her. Mina and 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 were also in the same predicament as the others that were warped away, only that they were warped into the windstorm zone. A very chaotic zone that was built for heroes to handle cyclones of weather storms while rescuing people. But in this situation, Mina and 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 have to rescue themselves. Mina and 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 were running away from the villains that were chasing after them. They were not only battling against the villains, they were also battling the sheer weather. Running through an alleyway, they were being chased by villains. Mina stopped and splashed them with her acid that burned them as she grabbed 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's arm and continued to run. We need to get out of here, Mina shouted as she was dragging 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 with her. This place is so unmanly, dude. We can't see anything with all the wind and rain. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 said. They were about to make a turn when a villain suddenly appeared in front of them. She had a wind-based quirk and blew them both away from each other. They widened their eyes when they realized that they both were being separated. Mina crashed into the other side of building as she started panicking. She continued to run with her acid covering her feet to increase her mobility and speed. She looked above her and saw the villains jumping down from the villain. She aimed her acid above her and splashed them, burning their skin and costume off slightly as she made haste to find her friend and reunite with him. She encountered more villains ahead of her. She was determined to get past them as she used her dancing skills to bend her body down as low as possible. It was like she was playing limbo as she dodges an upcoming swing, aiming for her head. She got back up and made a quick turn to splash him with her acid. She made it to the main road of the fake city and saw the exit at the end of the road. She felt extreme joy, but she still needed to find 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 and escape together. It was as if on cue, she saw 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 flying in the air after an explosion occurred. He landed in a superhero pose and looked around him and saw Mina. 𝗧𝗃. The exit. Mina then pointed at the exit and 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 nodded. He then ran up to her while punching villains that blocked his way. They then ran together to the main exit, but they stopped when Mina suddenly screamed in pain. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 looked and saw that Mina was shot by a bullet in her shoulder. He looked around and saw a gunner on top of a building tower. The villain shot another bullet and aimed for Mina's head. He failed to shoot her as 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 blocked the bullet with his steel quirk. I'm okay, let's just go. Mina shouted as she ran with 𝗳𝗬𝗃𝗃 close behind her. Gunshots can be still heard as 𝗳𝗬𝗃𝗃 blocked them all. They reached the door and immediately opened it and closed behind them when they exited. Mina used what was left of her strength to shut the door close with her spraying her acid. They then heard banging from the other side as they sighed in relief. Mina! Holy 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃! Your arm got shot. 𝗳𝗬𝗃𝗃 screamed in concern. Don't mind it. We need to go back to our class and make sure they're safe. Mina said as 𝗳𝗬𝗃𝗃 nodded. 𝗳𝗬𝗃𝗃 then took Mina off her feet and picked her up bridal style. Mina got flustered and told him that he didn't need to, but he insisted and said that it's what a man's supposed to do. They then made haste to return back to their class. In the ruin zone, Katsuki and Kirishima were fending off the villains that were attacking them inside of one of the fallen buildings that they were warped on. Villains came running in groups heading inside the room to corner the two heroes in training. Using the overwhelming numbers to their advantage, Kirishima hardened his body and punched the villains all over and slammed them in the walls, occasionally protecting Katsuki with his hardened body and would retaliate with a punch to their face. He grabbed a villain by the head that was about to attack Katsuki and kneed him in the back before throwing him to the side. Katsuki exploded the villain's left and right. He used his palm strikes and struck the villain in their chest, following up with an explosion that sent them to a wall that made a crater. They were knocked out almost instantly. One villain had a knife on his hand and was about to gut Katsuki when Katsuki launched himself up with an explosion to dodge the knife attack. He countered with an explosion to the villain's neck, knocking him out. Dude, we totally messed up. If we didn't attack the smoke guy, then Hitoshi would have totally brainwashed him. We need to go back, they might be in trouble or in danger. Kirishima said to him, a little panicked. We do need to go back, I have a bad feeling about something. We did mess up, but don't worry about those extras, cause if these kind of villains are what's attacking them, then they'll be fine. Those extras aren't weak at all. Katsuki said as he exploded another villain. A villain then suddenly leaped out nowhere with a knife on his hand and had a chameleon mutation. Katsuki then held out his palms and caught the villain's face. He then slammed him to the floor with an explosion that knocked him out. Now, come on, shitty hair. Time to go back to the entrance. He yelled out to the redhead and nodded. They exited the building and head on to the entrance. Both heroes in training fought off villains on the way. Back at Central Plaza, Shoyuta is at the brink of death until the blue-haired man ordered the creature to stop pummeling the hero down with its fist. The villain then approached Shoyuta with a wicked grin behind his mask made out of a hand. It's been fun, Eraserhead. I hope you like our bioweapon to kill All Might. We named it Nomu, the bioengineered creature that will kill the symbol of peace. He then started laughing maniacally and psychotically. It's now the end for you, hero? He declared as he was about to reach to touch Shuta's face. Suddenly, a water tentacle wrapped around his hand that was reaching out to touch the hero's face. It covered his whole hand before turning into solid ice. Shigaraki was then caught off guard when a giant fist made out of water suddenly punched the Nomu off of the hero and into a wall that made a crater. A binding cloth then made its way around the hero's body, wrapping tightly around him, and was then pulled towards the cloth's source. Shigaraki looked to see where the attacks came from and saw Izuku and Hitoshi, with Hitoshi holding on to Shoyuta. They looked incredibly mad as they were radiating powerful killing intents that would put Stain's own to shame. You're not killing our dad today, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Izuku said as he yanked Shigaraki of his feet. Shigaraki's hand was frozen in Izuku water tentacle as he started spinning him around the air as he screamed bloody murder. Izuku then made his water tentacle unfreeze as he tossed the villain to a wall. Shigaraki was luckily caught by Kurogiri's warp portals and was warped to safety. Shigaraki's red piercing eyes showed incredible anger as he felt humiliated with what the brats do to him. I'll kill you, brat. Nomu, kill that blue-haired brat. He ordered the creature as he got up from the wall. It started running in full speed towards Izuku and Hitoshi, and they both were ready for it. This was it. The last battle. A moment where it'll decide the fate of the heroes in training. Will they defeat the forces of evil and be victorious? Or will they submit to the darkness? Let's find out as they make a last stand. Third POV. The Nomu sped up towards the heroes in training, ready to kill them on the spot. Izuku and Hitoshi readied themselves for the creature's attack as Shigaraki was laughing psychotically in the background. You can't defeat 𝗵𝗲. It is built to take on All Might. He laughed again as his wickedness seeped from his crusty body. The 𝗵𝗲 was now in front of them, ready to punch, but Izuku caught it by using the water from the shipwreck zone to create a water fist. But then he was shocked when the water fist was destroyed in an instant when it came in contact with the 𝗵𝗲's fist. Another was about to hit Izuku when 𝗬𝗲 wrapped her tongue around Izuku's waist, pulling him away from the 𝗵𝗲. Izuku retaliated as he made another water fist and punched the 𝗵𝗲 that blew him away a few meters. Thanks 𝗬𝗲, I would have been in big trouble if it weren't for you. Izuku said, thanking her for the assist. It's nothing, she said as a reply. The 𝗵𝗲 got up again and made its way towards the students. Izuku started making circular movements with his hands as the water from the lake started flowing towards the creature. The water wrapped around its body as it thrashed around to break free. Izuku then clasped his hands together as the water froze, creating a frozen sphere prison. That should hold him for now. We need to retreat and get Dad away from here, Izuku told the other two as they nodded. They then ran with Hitoshi wrapping his dad's wounds with his capture bands as it was soaked with his blood. He looked extremely worried. 𝗬𝗲 then wrapped her teacher in her tongue as she ran on her fours while carrying him. You cheaters! You're all just NPCs. You stupid brats. 𝗵𝗲, get out of there and kill them, Shigaraki said, doing a tantrum as the 𝗵𝗲 broke free from his ice prison. Izuku, Hitoshi, and 𝗬𝗲 heard the sound of ice breaking as they looked back to see the monster free. It was now chasing after them. Izuku used the water from his gourd and sprayed it at the creature's legs. He was then frozen in place. Hurry, we need to go, Izuku shouted as they made haste. Dad's losing a lot of blood, Izuku, Hitoshi said with a scared and worried expression. Izuku looked to see his dad's bleeding head, exposed elbow and broken arms. He looked like a mess. He checked his pulse and it was getting weaker and weaker after the second. He then flowed more water out from his gourd and wrapped it around his hands. The water then started shimmering a blue light as he tried healing the wounds while continuing to run. He struggled to concentrate but still closed his head wound and some open wounds on his body. It was going well until it wasn't. Izuku suddenly felt a giant hand wrapped around him. His heart dropped and the faces of 𝗬𝗲 and Hitoshi looked horrified. Izuku was then yanked away from them as the hand gripped him tightly. The 𝗵𝗲 then started running away with Izuku in hand. Izuku/Zuku. The two shouted as they saw him being taken away. Just go. I'll be okay, he said as he was dragged. The two contemplated on what to do, but made a decision to leave Izuku behind for now, since Shoyuda was almost at death's door. They reached the stairs as 𝗬𝗲 saw them. Dude, what happened to Sensei? 𝗬𝗲 asked as he saw the state of his teacher. No time, wrap his wounds with your tape, I need to help Izuku, he said, and as if on cue he heard a death-defying scream coming from Central Plaza. They all looked and widened their eyes to see that the scream came from Izuku. He was held up in the air by the 𝗵𝗲 as he was being slowly crushed by its grip. Hitoshi immediately jumped down and back to Central Plaza as he heard his brother scream. 𝗬𝗲 called out to him to stop, but it only fell on deaf ears. He groaned and wrapped Shoyuda with his tape to stop some of his bleeding. Azui, get Aizawa-sensei out of here. I'll chase after Hitoshi and bring him back, 𝗬𝗲 said as 𝗬𝗲 nodded and hopped away with Aizawa wrapped in her tongue. 𝗬𝗲 rushed down to Central Plaza and chased after Hitoshi. He got close and shot his tape on Hitoshi's back and pulled him back towards him. He then wrapped him around in more tape to stop him from moving. Let me go. He is my brother. I'm not going to let him kill my brother, Hitoshi shouted as he thrashed around to break free from the tapes. Dude, calm down. Ida is gonna be back with the teachers from UA. Let's just wait for a hot day, 𝗬𝗲 reasoned, but Hitoshi didn't listen. They then heard another scream and looked to see that it was Izuku again. He was still trapped in the creature's hand as it tightened its grip on Izuku more. Then they heard the villain spoke in a wicked and sinister manner. People of this building, I, Tamura Shigaraki, the leader of the League of Villains, asks for you all to tell me where the DMN symbol of peace is, or this brat over here gets it. He threatened as the 𝗵𝗃 gripped Izuku tighter and he started screaming. "Dude, All Might's not here. He ain't coming here, now let my friend go," 𝗳𝗃 said to the villain. The villain started to scratch the back of his neck vigorously as the back of his skin crumbled into dust. He groaned in annoyance as he looked at the struggling Izuku. BLD red eyes met blue ocean eyes, and Shigaraki had an idea that made him smile wickedly. "'Cause All Might isn't here and I'm getting impatient, I'll just kill this NPC," he announces as 𝗳𝗃 and Hitoshi widen their eyes. Hitoshi immediately broke off of 𝗳𝗃's tape as he rushed to save his brother. 𝗳𝗃 grabbed his head and groaned before following his lead. "Say goodbye to this NPC. 𝗵𝗃 crush him." And the 𝗵𝗃 did as it was told. It was as if time slowed down. Hitoshi was screaming while running towards his brother with 𝗳𝗃 right behind him. Shigaraki was laughing maniacally in the background and the 𝗵𝗃 started closing its fist as Izuku screamed at the top of his lungs. The 𝗵𝗃 then closed its fist as Izuku's body splashed and turned into water. Hitoshi screamed with tears in his eyes as 𝗳𝗃 taped his back and pulled him away. He then held Hitoshi back as Shigaraki continued to laugh at their pitiful display of emotions. "Ha! You think you can kill me 𝗳𝗵𝗃?" someone suddenly said as they all looked surprised. The water that was underneath the 𝗵𝗃 that came from when Izuku was supposedly crushed started moving away from them. The water then started gathering around itself and then turned to reveal Izuku that had a smirk on his face. The villains had wide eyes and shocked faces as well as Hitoshi and 𝗳𝗃. "I can turn my body into water. So go and yourself." Izuku shouted. He turned his arms into water and then realized that his blue gourd was destroyed from when the 𝗵𝗃 crushed it into pieces. He then faced his friends and gave them a thumbs up that he's okay and Hitoshi wiped his tears. "Come on guys, we need to beat this guy and save the day," he said to them as they nodded. Shigaraki was and ordered the 𝗵𝗃 to kill them all. They then engaged in a heated battle. 𝗳𝗃 started wrapping the 𝗵𝗃 with his tape. He was then temporarily immobile as his limbs were wrapped around together. Hitoshi then wrapped his capture bands as well. They then both used their strength and started spinning the 𝗵𝗃 around before throwing it to a wall. Izuku attacked as well and made a drill with his water arms and struck the 𝗵𝗃 in its chest. It screamed in agony as a hole was made in his chest and Izuku jumped back. They all looked to see that the 𝗵𝗃's chest wound instantly healed up and the injury disappeared. He then got back up and howled at them. "Ha! You can't kill my 𝗵𝗃. It has instant regeneration and shock absorption. It is invincible," Shigaraki declared. The 𝗵𝗃 then rushed towards the students and was ready to punch. Izuku covered 𝗳𝗃 and Hitoshi with his water to block the attack, but suddenly, Kirishima came out of nowhere and blocked the attack for them by using his hardened body. They all looked shocked to see him. A trail of ice appeared as well, as it froze the 𝗵𝗃 in place. It covered the creature in spikes of ice as it tried to break free from them. They then heard explosions coming from the distance and it was Katsuki entering the battlefield with a blast. He exploded the 𝗵𝗃's face with his explosion as it screeched in pain. "Guys," Izuku, Hitoshi, and 𝗳𝗃 said in relief as they saw Katsuki, Shoto, and Kirishima save them. "Don't worry dudes. I'll protect you brothers," Kirishima said as he winced in pain when he saw his hardening crumble. "What the heck is going on here? Why is there another party that suddenly appeared?" Shigaraki shouted. He then started to run in anger towards them and tried to reach them and touch them with his hands. But he was quickly stopped when he was suddenly captured inside of a capture net. He struggled to break free and looked to see where it came from. It was Momo, along with Jiro and Kaminari. "You brats. I'll kill you all. 𝗵𝗃 kill them," he shouted while thrashing around the net. The 𝗵𝗃 broke free from Shoto's ice trap and punched Kirishima in the gut. He grunted in pain as he was pushed back into the stairs. He was then knocked out unconscious. "Kirishima!" everyone yelled. Soon, Tetsu arrived suddenly and punched the 𝗵𝗃 with his steel arms, but he saw that it didn't do anything and he was instead grabbed by the 𝗵𝗃 and was thrown to the stairs as well. Katsuki propelled himself towards the 𝗵𝗃 and delivered a palm strike, quickly followed by an explosion to its chest. It burned him slightly but ultimately was unaffected. Shoto then burned it with his flame and it shrieked from the burns. Mina attacked it as well and sprayed the creature with her acid, using both of her arms as she winced in pain due to her bullet wound. There, Izuku noticed that the burns that the creature received didn't heal instantly, and that gave him an idea. It was gamble, but if it does work then they'll stop the Nomu once and for all. Everyone, get back. I'm turning to dragon mode, so get back. He told everyone as they did and backed away from him. When he saw his friends out of the way, he then transformed into his water dragon form and he screeched into the air. He was now triple the size of the Nomu as Shigaraki and 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 looked at him in fear. What is this? No one told me of a secret dragon boss. Nomu, handle it. He ordered the Nomu. The dragon and Nomu brawled one another as Izuku pushed it away with his tail, but the Nomu clinged onto it and used its monstrous strength to flip Izuku on his back. Izuku quickly got back up and stomped the Nomu with his foot. He struggled a little to crush the Nomu as he held Izuku's foot up, but eventually he crushed him to the ground. He then repeatedly stomped the Nomu again and again. He then grabbed the Nomu and flew up into the air, reaching the ceiling. He then threw the Nomu to the ground with tremendous strength that left a crater to where it landed. Izuku then opened his mouth and sent a vortex of burning water at the creature. It didn't have the time to get up and evade the attack as it was blasted by the high-pressure boiling water. The others looked at amazement at Izuku's power as they looked to see the Nomu take all of the attack. When Izuku stopped, they looked to see what was left of the Nomu. It was nothing but a burnt body with a couple of holes, and they all knew that the creature was no longer alive as it no longer moved. You cheaters! He was supposed to kill All Might. You cheaters, you cheaters! Shigaraki kept repeating as he was having a tantrum. Suddenly, the doors of UA opened and revealed all of the teachers of UA. Among them was Ida, who was the one that called for their help. Everyone, help has arrived. Ida shouted as the students had a look of relief. Meanwhile, the man-child villain was shaking in anger as his plan has failed. And it's all because of our 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃 dragon. Shigaraki, it is best to retreat for now and formulate another better plan. Kurohige suggested as Shigaraki nodded. We'll see each other again, heroes. But know this, I will have my revenge. Especially you, dragon, I will slay you. He declared as a portal appeared behind them. Izuku didn't want them to escape and immediately fled downwards towards them, but he was too late as they entered the portal and escaped. Izuku cursed himself, but soon exhaustion took over his body as he felt himself falling in the air. He turned back into his human form and started falling in the sky. Luckily, he was saved by his boyfriend who launched himself up in the air and caught him. They then landed and Katsuki saw that Izuku fell asleep. He kissed his forehead sweetly as Izuku cuddled closer to his chest. You did well, Izu. Get some rest, you earned it. Katsuki said as a smile formed on his face as he saw his sweet dragon sleeping in his arms. Third POV. Katsuki carried Izuku bridal style, since he was unconscious due to exhaustion after the brawl he had with the Nomu. He won by using the tremendous heat from his water vortex breath and burnt the body of the 𝗵𝗃𝗃, resulting to its demise as it can't regenerate it as fast as it possibly can because of the heat. Katsuki brought Izuku's unconscious body as others came to make sure he was okay. They all sighed in relief when they saw that he was all right after a gruesome battle. But others weren't as lucky as Izuku. Kirishima and Tetsutetsu were thrown to the stairs by the Nomu, resulting to their knocked-out state. Momo checked them and he closed her eyes and sighed heavily as she saw their state. Kirishima's body had started to crumble due to his hardening quirk, as the punch was too much for him to handle. Tetsutetsu's looked like he had a broken right arm when his fist collided with the Nomus. They need medical attention fast. Their injuries are too critical, we need recovery girl. Momo said, and as if it was on cue, recovery girl made her way towards them. She looked at their state and started clicking her tongue and shaking her head. From her view, their bodies were a mess. Broken arms, bruised bodies, broken backs, all of the major injuries that they could have possibly get, they both have. Get the stretchers and load these students up. I'm afraid that their hero careers will end before they even finish their first week of school. Recovery girl said with a sad expression. The other students widened their eyes at the thought of them not becoming heroes because they were true heroes in their eyes. Kirishima jumped in front of an attack not once, but twice, to protect his classmates. And 𝗬𝗪𝗪 blocked one of the 𝗵𝗃's punch with his own to counter, but was overpowered. The class looked as the two were taken away by the paramedics with Recovery Girl close behind them. They all felt terrible as their friends were in such a state that they might not become heroes. Mina even started crying as she dropped to her knees and rubbed her eyes. I can't believe this. They don't deserve this. Kirishima is the most heroic person I ever met that had dreamed of becoming a hero. And 𝗬𝗪𝗪 kept protecting me when we were warped away from villains and even took a bullet for me. She cried out as Jiro and Momo bent down and comforted her. Hey, don't cry. They both will be taken care of by Recovery Girl, so don't worry about those two. Jiro said, trying to comfort her. Yes, she is correct. Recovery Girl is a renowned healer. They will be in good hands. Now, let's get that bullet wound out of your arm, Monk said as she nodded. They supported her as she winced in pain from the bullet wound. They called a paramedics and she was brought to an ambulance. They also passed Aizawa and Izuku, who were also being loaded in an ambulance with present Mike, Hitoshi, and Katsuki with them. What a mess this villains have made. Make sure to capture all villains. Nizu ordered the teachers as they nodded. Soon the police came as they arrested all of the captured villains. They rounded them all up and had a total number of 87 villains. Detective Tsukachi then asked a few questions to the students to get to know what exactly happened during the attack since both teachers were down. After about an hour of interviewing the students, he get the gist of what basically went down. He was a little mad since they said that All Might was supposed to show up but never did. He just needed 8 more statements and they were the ones that were admitted to the hospital. Speaking of the hospital, Izuku woke up from his nap and smelled the scent of disinfectants and the sound of a vital monitor. He looked around to see both Katsuki and Hitoshi asleep on a chair in the corner of the room. He turned to see that his dad and 13 were there, and at the other side was 𝗬𝗪𝗪 and Kirishima. Katsuki suddenly woke up and saw Izuku awake. He rushed to him and woke Hitoshi up as well. They rushed to his side and hugged him tightly as he hugged them back. The door then opened to reveal Recovery Girl. And by the sound of the opening door, 𝗬𝗪𝗪 and Kirishima slowly woke up as well, along with the teachers. I see that you are all awake, Recovery Girl said as she made her way inside. I have good news and couple of bad news. They started tensing up at the mention of the bad news part. For the good news, everyone is okay and are safe. Your classmate, Ms. Ishido, had already made a full recovery after a bullet was shot at her arm. 13, you will be making a full recovery soon enough. Now, onto the bad news. Their heart rates then increased as they were slightly panicking on the inside. Aizawa, your whole body is a mess, but I can heal you up with my quirk, but not right now because of the lack of energy that you have. And for Mr. Kirishima and Mr. 𝗬𝗪𝗪, I believe that as a doctor that has evaluated your conditions, it is best that you both drop out from the hero's course and no longer pursue heroics. Recovery Girl said with a heavy heart as the two mentioned students widened their eyes. But we can't do that. It's our dream to become heroes. Kirishima said as tears started dripping from his eyes. It's the only thing that I wanted to do. I can't not pursue being a hero. 𝗬𝗪𝗪 added as he started crying. You can use your quirk on us again. Please help us get better. We need to become heroes and be able to help others, please. Recovery Girl shook her head no. I am terribly sorry, but my quirk also has its limits and this is one of them. This is for the best if you want to continue on living your lives. Now, you have guessed that all wanted to see you. She finished as she opened the door to reveal the Izuku squad. They rushed inside when they saw Kirishima and 𝗬𝗪𝗪 crying while laying down on their bed. They asked them what's wrong and they filled them in that they should no longer become heroes due to their injuries. The whole room became depressing as some cried for them and some tried comforting them with tears shedding their eyes. Even the teachers couldn't help but feel pity for them since they didn't even get to finish a week at UA. Aizawa and 13 cursed themselves for not being able to protect their students, and it resulted to them no longer becoming heroes even though they didn't even graduated from UA. It seemed that all hope was lost until it wasn't, as a shining light appeared before them in the form of a blue-haired boy with ocean eyes. He raised his hand and suggested something that could help his friends. "I can try and heal them," Izuku suggested as the room turned their eyes to him. "When I control water, I have the abilities to heal. How are you so sure that you can heal them, Sunny?" "Even I can't, but how can you?" Recovery Girl asked, as she didn't want to give false hope to the other two that will crush their spirits even further. Izuku then took a deep sigh as he explained. "I'm going to tell you all a story that you might all think is fiction, but it is the most furthest from that. This is all true. This story tells how I disappeared 3 years ago." The students looked at each other before focusing on his tale. He then told them about how he disappeared. He mentioned that he jumped from a waterfall to kill himself, that earned a few gasps, and ended all somewhere where he met Umi, the serpentine dragon. He also talked about how he was originally quirkless and how Umi gave him powers. They all nodded and heard him out and his story, but they still questioned the healing capabilities of his power. "Now for my healing abilities. It just suddenly appeared when I wanted to heal Kaken's wound. Umi mentioned that even she didn't have the healing ability and my powers derived from hers. So that makes me come to believe that I have a strong healing powers, but to make sure, I want to heal them at the spring waterfall where Umi's domain portal is, since the water there is pure and came from Umi's domain," Izuku said as they all had skeptical looks on their faces. "Let's do it," Kirishima said as they all turned to look at him with stunned faces. "Yeah bro, if there is even a little chance that this will work, then we'll take it," Tetsu said as Recovery Girl sighed. She nodded in approval as everyone had a small celebration. She then called a few people to help carry the students carefully on the ambulance. They also brought Aizawa with them as 13 was almost completely healed and passed the offer. The Izuku squad went, as well as emotional support and the fact that they won't take a no for an answer. They all rode the ambulance and led in front of the forest that lead to the spring waterfalls. They brought the 3 injured down that were on stretchers. Present Mike, who came with them, pushed Aizawa's stretcher while Kirishima was being pushed by Mina and Siro. And Tetsu was being pushed by Momo and Kaminari. They made their way through the forest and eventually made it to the water spring that Izuku told them about. They even passed Izuku's statue that was built for him as Siro and Kaminari bowed to it and made Izuku annoyed. "Okay, now let's place them in the shallow parts of the water. We don't want them to drown now, wouldn't we?" Izuku told them as they placed Kirishima, Tetsu, and Shoyuta in the water. Izuku then took a deep breath before he started to heal them. "Umi," he said as the water started to glow a pink luminescent glow that lit up the dark forest. The Izuku squad was at awe as they saw the pretty display of pink light glowing in the water. They then turned to Izuku, who started waving his hands around in a circle-like motion while moving his feet. It was as if he was dancing. Izuku continued his little dance as he controlled the water and made little waves that brushed over the injured people. The water then soon changed from a pink into a clear blue light that matched Izuku's eyes. His said eyes started glowing as his hair started to float in air. They looked to see that the light blue glow was more intense in where the injured laid. They saw that they all closed their eyes, seemingly sleeping as the water started to form small waves and small swirls around them. Izuku continues his little dance. This went on for 5 minutes before Izuku ended his dance and the light glow slowly dimmed down and turned back to normal. They all then saw Izuku struggling to get up as he fell on his back. "Izuku!" They all shouted as they rushed to him. They all saw that he was still awake as he pointed towards the injured that were in the water. They all got his message as they pulled the 3 out of the water and back to land. Recovery Girl inspected them and they looked okay, but they will soon know if it actually worked when they wake up. After waiting for a few minutes, their eyes fluttered awake and saw that they were surrounded by them. Recovery Girl then asked them if they were in pain and they shook their heads no. That shocked them all. Kirishima started to stand up on his 2 feet that he was supposed to be unable to do so because of his broken back. And Tetsu was moving his arm effortlessly. Shoyuta looked okay as well. Kirishima and Tetsu started crying as their bodies were fully healed by Izuku. They gave each other a hug as tears dripped down from their eyes. The Izuku squad started cheering for them and jumped up and down in the air and gave the 2 a big hug. but they realized that 2 people were missing. "Wait, where's Izuku and Katsuki?" Jiro questioned as they looked around their hug and did not see them. "We need to thank him. He's so manly that he healed our bodies," Kirishima stated as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 nodded. "Yeah, where is our bro?" 𝗧𝗵𝗃 asked as they looked back. There they saw Izuku sleeping on Katsuki's lap. His arms were wrapped around his neck and his legs were wrapped around his waist. They both looked cute together. "Shut up, you loud extras. He's sleeping, tired from healing your shitty bodies," Katsuki said softly and quietly to not wake up his boyfriend. Almost everyone took the situation to their advantage and took a picture of the cute couple. They were sure that Katsuki won't yell at them since he didn't want to wake Izuku up. They were right as he was fuming with rage but didn't scream at them as they continued to take pictures. Eventually, they all left the spring waterfalls with Katsuki carrying the sleeping Izuku in a koala position. The others continued to snicker but were met with Katsuki's death glares. They all got home and Kirishima and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 told their teacher to thank Izuku for healing them as he nodded. Izuku continued to sleep peacefully during their way home as another hurdle was about to be thrown at him the next time that school will come back. Third POV. A few days have passed since the USJ incident and it was now the weekends. After Izuku healed Kirishima, 𝗧𝗵𝗃, and his dad at the spring waterfalls, he fell asleep in exhaustion. He did not wake up the next day and left his family and Katsuki extremely worried. They even called Recovery Girl to check Izuku's condition. She told them that he must have overused his power after healing their extremely broken bodies, and to let him sleep and rest until he wakes up on his own. He woke up after 2 days and everyone sighed in relief. He was extremely happy that he was able to help Kirishima and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 in healing their broken bodies. Now that it is the weekends, a UA meeting was going to be held by the UA staff to discuss the recent events that transpired during the first week of school. All staff members are required to attend since 𝗍𝗫 had a lot of things to say. Currently, they all are seated in the meeting room with 𝗍𝗫 sitting in the front, facing everyone. Aizawa and 13 were silently glaring at All Might for not being able to attend the class and missed it entirely, and 𝗍𝗃 arrived when everything was already over. 𝗍𝗫 then coughed to catch everyone's attention and to finally start the meeting. "Welcome everyone to today's staff meeting. I suppose you already know today's agenda, then let's no longer dilly-dally and continue on with this." 𝗍𝗫 started before giving everyone a copy of a folder that recorded all that had happened during the attack. From what we have gathered, the group that attacked our students called themselves the League of Villains. Currently, we do not know much of them other than the fact that they want to kill All Might as their goal. All Might then visibly tensed up at the mention of their goal. From what the students have said during their questioning, the leader's name is Tamura Shigaraki. He was described as a man-child because of his childish attitude and the way he spoke using video game references. The other is named Kurogiri, who looked to be like Shigaraki's aide during the whole attack. Their quirks are decay and warping, respectively. 𝗍𝗫 said after reading the reports on the villains. "Do you think that they caused the incident that happened during lunch that day? You know, when the press broke in at UA?" Midnight asked as 𝗍𝗫 nodded. He then rolled a clip that showed moments before the UA berries disintegrated into dust. 𝗍𝗫 then paused and zoomed in at a man with blue hair that touched the barrier before it turned to dust. The man then suddenly disappeared when a black mass appeared below him where he fell down into it. As you all could see here, we could see that the man with the blue hair touched the barrier before it disintegrated into nothing. According to the students that we asked, the appearance of the villains of their description matches perfectly with him as well as his quirk. And then we could see that if he disappeared when that black hole appeared below him, we suspect it to be Kurogiri's quirk. So they used the press as a distraction to infiltrate UA? Snipe asked. Indeed. They must have took a schedule of classes to look for where All Might's next class is gonna be, and it just so happens that he was supposed to be with Class 1A during their rescue training at USJ. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend because he used up all of his time capturing a small-time villain that other heroes were already in the process of capturing. 𝗍𝗫 said as he glared deeply at All Might. The rest of the staff did the same thing as All Might hid in his seat. He felt guilty that he was the reason for the attack, and the fact that he wasn't there resulted for the villains to attack the students instead. He felt horrible knowing this. Now, moving on to the incident itself. There were 87 villains that were captured and are arrested by the police. However, 2 villains, being Shigaraki and 𝗵𝗃𝗁, escaped with the use of 𝗵𝗃𝗁's quirk. There was also another villain that was described by the students as a bulky monster with a beak and an exposed brain. It is also said that it had multiple quirks, namely shock absorption and hyper-regeneration. The staff gasped at such a creature to have multiple quirks. The room became tensed as 𝗵𝗍𝗂 continued. It is his creature that the villains called 𝗵𝗍𝗄 was supposed to be the one capable of defeating All Might. It showed that it was truly capable as it almost killed Aizawa, if he was not saved by his own kids. It was also the reason that Mr. Kirishima and Mr. Tetsutetsu almost lost their chances at becoming heroes. Luckily, Mr. Izuku Aizawa was able to defeat it. How? How was he able to defeat that creature when it's designed to beat me? All Might said in disbelief as others rolled their eyes. What? Can't accept the fact that he overpowered the creature that was meant to overpower you? Aizawa questioned as All Might started sweating. That is now what I meant. If it weren't for my son, I wouldn't be here right now, and certainly there would be more casualties if not for him defeating that creature. It just goes to show how much potential he has. So much potential that he might just be able to take that #1 spot from you when he goes pro. Aizawa said, smirking while looking directly at All Might's eyes. All Might immediately sweated like there's no tomorrow as he was shut down by Aizawa. He couldn't think of a comeback as he saw some of the staff groan at his words. Okay, now that's enough. Continuing on with the meeting, many parents have been doubting us because of that incident. Especially the fact that 2 students almost lost their lives if not for Mr. Izuku Aizawa healing them. We have received a lot of backlash from the public, especially the fact that we are supposedly to be known as one of the most secured places in Japan, and we were infiltrated by a villain organization. So, what are we going to do? The sports festival is almost around the corner. Are we going to have to cancel it? Present Mike questioned as the staff gloomed a little. No. In fact, we are not postponing that event. We are going to hold it like we always do every year. This event is very important for our students, especially our students of the hero course. This is where they will show their skills to other heroes and show them what they are capable of. This is also important for when they are to intern at hero agencies. We would just have to amp up our security to the power of 5 to make sure everything runs smoothly. This would also show that UA is not threatened by them and that our crisis management is outstanding, like always. The staff then nodded and took note of what he said so that they could announce it to their class. But 𝗵𝗍𝗄 still had another proposition to ensure the safety of the students of UA. I would also like to propose the idea of transforming UA into a boarding school to even further protect our students from threats. Bezu proposed as the teachers nodded in agreement. But we won't have time to build the dormitories because of the amount of workload due to the upcoming sports festival. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 said with concern as 𝗵𝗍𝗄 nodded. I have taken that to account. We will start the construction of the dorm buildings after the sports festival. We will give our students a rest week, and that is the time for when we will do the immediate construction of the buildings. Make sure to notify your classes about this proposal. The teachers then nodded as they wrote it down on their notebooks or taking mental notes of the dorm system. 𝗵𝗍𝗄 then ended the meeting as everyone left the meeting room. By then, he was the only one left as he looked out into the window and gazed at the setting sun in the distance. I'm afraid that there might be a mole amongst the students. It's better to keep this theory to myself for now, until I have some evidence to prove it. 𝗵𝗍𝗄 said to himself as worry and concern can be seen in his eyes. Monday then rolled around as all of the students returned to school. Many parents still felt uneasy for their kids to return back to school that was just recently attacked by a villain organization, but still let them to pursue their dreams. Izuku and Hitoshi were arriving at their classroom as Hitoshi yawned as he still was a bit sleepy. Izuku was excited because he was able to see Kirishima and Tetsutetsu since he wasn't able to when he fell asleep due to overusing his power. They opened the door and Izuku was immediately bombarded with questions. They ranged from, "Are you okay? You were so awesome. I can't believe you beat that thing." And so on. He reassured them that he was fine and immediately searched for Kirishima and 𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬. Kirishima, 𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬. Izuku called out as they both turned to face him. Dude, we didn't get to thank you properly after you healed our bodies. We really owe you one, dude. You're so manly. 𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬 said as manly tears swept his cheeks. Yeah, Izubro. You are totally my bro for life. The manliest man I will ever know. Thank you so much for healing our bodies. Kirishima added as manly tears were also dripping down his face. No, it's okay. You guys are like my friends. Remember that I'll always have your back whenever you need me. Izuku said as he smiled brightly at them. The class had one collective thought when they saw his smile. It's too bright and too pure. They all thought as they squinted to warn off the light. We will also have your back, dude/bro. Thank you. They both said in unison as they made a perfect 90-degree bow that made Ida very proud. Izuku then told them to stop it and said that they didn't have to do that. They then rushed to hug him tightly as their manly tears stained his uniform. He patted their backs gently as he had a very awkward face. The rest of the class took pics of the wholesome moment that the three were having. Everyone settle down and get back to your seats. A man said, and they all looked to see that it was Aizawa. They all immediately got back to their seats. Sir, aren't you supposed to be still recovering? Your body looked like it was messed up a week ago in that USJ incident. Uraraka said as she was concerned for her teacher. I am fine. Thanks to Izuku's healing, my wounds and other stuff are healed, so no need to worry about me and my well-being. What you all need to worry about is the next battle and hurdle you will all be facing. Aizawa said in a serious tone as the whole class gulped at the thought of another villain attack. The sports festival is coming up, he said as everyone sighed in relief. The class then started erupting in cheers of excitement for the upcoming sports festival. But some questioned why they were still being held. Sir, is it really safe to do the sports festival this year? Jiro questioned. Yeah, isn't the sports festival going to be a prime target for villains to attack? Ojiro added. Nope, the sports festival will continue. This is an important event that is broadcast live all over the world. This event holds the same importance as the Olympic Games back during pre-quirkless. This is also a time where you problem children get to show your skills and what you're capable of to pro heroes for internships and work studies that are essential. Don't worry about villain attacks since the sports festival will have 5 times the security compared to other sports festivals held in the past. Aizawa said, trying to reassure his students as they all nodded in understanding. Now that is settled. UA had also proposed the idea of changing into a boarding school. Aizawa mentioned as everyone looked shocked at the sudden change. Is this to ensure the safety of all students during their time here at UA? Momo questioned as Aizawa gave her a nod. That is correct, Yaoyorozu. You all will be moving after the dormitories are built at UA grounds. Most likely after the sports festival. Make sure to notify your parents of the change and have them agree on this system. Now train for the remainder weeks before the sports festival and make sure not SCK at national television. Now that will be all. Aizawa finished as he slipped back into his sleeping bag. He knew that they were going to ask more questions but didn't want to entertain them since he was tired and lazy. The class were dumbfounded and decided to discuss amongst themselves. Soon, homeroom ended and the other classes started until it was now lunchtime. The Izuku squad went back to their claimed seats as they sat down and ate together, while conversing with one another. Mina, Momo, and Jiro were talking about girl stuff. Shoto, Izuku, and Siro were talking with one another, and Katsuki was being bothered by 𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬 and Kirishima's useless discussions. On the other hand, there was a development with Kaminari and Hitoshi. Izuku noticed it first back at the Izumi incident when Kaminari called Hito, that Hitoshi didn't seem to mind at all. Hitoshi also started calling Kaminari by his first name and Izuku knew something was up. They were talking with one another, obviously flirting. Izuku then had a brilliant idea that he wanted to propose to his friends for the 2-week training they have for the sport festival. Hey guys, do you all have plans for training for the sports festival? Izuku asked them. I was planning to just train with my father and brother. Shoto said. I was planning on training by myself. Siro mentioned as the others had the same plan. Well, what if we go train with Umi? Izuku suggested with a wide bright smile on his face. What? 33rd POV, what? They all shouted at Izuku in unison. They were in disbelief that he would offer them to train with an actual freaking dragon. The same dragon that trained Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki that are one of the best students in their class. But, do you not want to? Izuku said with sad puppy eyes that made them hard to say no. No, it's not like that, bro. It's just, are you sure that it's okay? Kaminari asked. Yeah, we don't want to accidentally make her angry and have her eat us or something, Mina said as she shuddered at the thought of angering a dragon. They all had the same thought as they all shuddered alongside her. What are you extra scared about? She ain't gonna bite. She's actually pretty cool and a good trainer. Katsuki mentioned as she slurped his extra spicy ramen. Yeah, Katsuki's right. I actually improved quite a lot under her guidance and teachings. Hitoshi added. They all looked at each other and they all looked like really wanted to take the offer, but were still a bit scared. Until Jiro spoke. I'm down. It's not like I have a clue on how to train by myself, so I'll take it. She said as she had a small smile on her face. I'll take it too. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually meet a real-life dragon. Mina squealed excitedly as she looked ecstatic. The others sighed and agreed to training with Izuku's dragon, and it made him extremely happy. He smiled widely and they all thought that he was acting like a puppy with a wagging tail that made him look cute. Then it settled. We will start today after school. We don't want to waste our time now, do we? Izuku said as they all nodded. They all ate their lunch and got back to their classroom. The Izuku squad were excited to finally meet Umi the dragon and train with her. School soon ended and they all gathered at the classroom before they headed out, but they were stopped when a group of students were outside of their classroom and were blocking their way. What's happening here? 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗃 said as she saw the sea of students outside their classroom. What business do you all have with Class 1A? Ida shouted at them while doing robot hands. Isn't it obvious? They're here to inspect the competition for the upcoming sports festival. Also the added fact that we were just attacked by villains last week. Katsuki pointed out as he made his way in front of the students outside. He's right. They're most likely checking us for the festival that will happen in 2 weeks' time. Izuku said as he made his way in front as well. Now move it extras? Katsuki threatened as the whole class sweat dropped at his aggressiveness. How imprudent of you all. Such aggressive behavior not fitting for the hero course. A female voice said and they both turned to see that it came from Izumi. Says the girl that got herself kicked out from the hero course on her first day of school. How does it feel to be kicked out without even attending a single heroics class? Izuku asked mockingly as she had a growling expression. Listen here, Izuku. I will get my place back in this class and I will do it by replacing you. I will wage war on you and take your seat in this class. Izumi declared as a few gasps can be heard in the background. Izuku smirked and had a face that was mocking her as he suddenly laughed. Yeah, you could wage a war on me or even a catastrophe, I don't care. I don't care about your pettiness, you dumb blonde, because I know for a fact that you will never take my spot in this class, or any of my classmates' spots. You know why? Because we earned our place here in the hero course, unlike you who had to let daddy blackmail the hero commission in order to attend this school. Now go piss us off, cause we're going to train for the sports festival. Izuku then gestured for his group to follow him. They then soon left, and the crowd had shocked and stunned faces. The fact that Izuku just announced that Izumi had to blackmail the hero commission to get into UA disgusted the students. They were whispering and murmuring about her as she walked out in a raging panic. The Izuku squad soon left the school gates as they were asking Izuku if what he said was true. He nodded and that made them feel even more furious towards Izumi. They all then boarded the train together and were headed back to the spring waterfalls to train with Umi. They reached the spring waterfalls as they contacted their parents that they will come home late since they were going to train for the sports festival with their friends. They all then approached the waters as they all were wondering how they'll get to see the dragon. So, how do we get there? Momo asked. By doing this. Umi. Izuku shouted as the water started glowing a luminescent pink. The water's glow reflected throughout the forest as it shined brightly. They all then looked at the water and were shocked when they saw that a hole was starting to appear in the middle. They saw Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki jump into the hole. "Come on guys," Izuku said as they all looked hesitant but jumped into the hole anyway. They all were screaming as they fell into the hole in the water. They felt like they were on an underwater stream that were pulling them in a fast pace. They all then popped out of another hole and were st amazement when they saw Umi's spring waterfalls. "Dude, is this real life?" 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked as he was looking around. "This place is so breathtaking," Momo commented. Soon, they saw something approaching them. It was Umi, slithering her way towards the group. They stared at her with awe as their mouths were open wide. Umi was also surprised to see that Izuku brought more mortals into her domain. "Umi!" Izuku screamed out as she hugged her tightly. "It has been far too long, child, since we have last met. I see you have brought more of your friends. To what can I assist with you all that you choose to enter my domain?" Umi asked as the Izuku squad stiffened, feeling a little bit frightened and nervous because of her presence. "I brought them here since I thought you could all help us train. We have a sports festival coming up and we all need to train really hard in order for us to be spot by pro heroes and to show them what we are capable of." Izuku explained as Umi nodded. "I don't see why not, I can't help. After all, I don't have much to do here, so I'll gladly help you all train," Umi said as the group let out a big smile and excited faces. "If you all wish to train, then I must first assess strengths. This is in order for me to know what you all need to improve. Who would like to go first?" Umi asked. They all looked hesitant before Shoto volunteered first. Umi then asked everyone else to step back as she was going to assess Shoto. Umi then summoned 5 water knights and attacked Shoto with them. Shoto quickly handled her water knights when he just froze them in place with his right side. She looked satisfied and decided to take it up a notch and summon Water Beast. He did the same thing again and froze them again. Umi then asked for the next person. Momo stepped in and Umi summoned a set of water knights to attack her. She created 2 bow staffs with a taser at the end and battled them. She used her skills as she gracefully defeated them by smacking and shocking them with her bow staff. She even summoned a shield to defend and defeated them all. This continued on as Umi assessed them all one by one. Mina dissolved the water knights with her acids and used her mobility to her advantage while incorporating her dancing skills to dodge their attacks. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 taped all of the water knights individually and trapped them in place and then swung them up and then down to the ground. Kirishima used his hardening to punch the water knights down into puddles and used his hardening to defend and block attacks. 𝗬𝗧 had a similar battle and used his steel arms to attack the enemies while also defending himself. Jiro struggled a little but still managed as she got up close to her enemies while dodging their attacks and inserted her earphone jacks into them, sending a full-volume heartbeat vibrations that made them collapse back into water. It was now Kaminari's turn. He looked pretty confident as the water knights started to rush to him. He aimed his pointer fingers into the ground and shocked all of them with a high-voltage electricity. Umi looked impressed until she saw him short-circuit and go to his way mode. Jiro laughed a little as she saw his dumb face. But Umi didn't look pleased about this. Izuku approached Kaminari and used his healing to restore Kaminari's brain back to normal. Kaminari then thanked Izuku as Izuku assured him that it was no problem. Umi then approached the group and gave her thoughts about what she has observed. "I am impressed with all of your skills. All you need is to polish them and further refine them into greater heights, and I am sure that I am able to help you all with that," said to them in a sweet and inspiring tone. This made them all extremely happy as they all were recognized by a dragon. However, she had more to say that is going to shock everyone. "However, what is your name, child with the blonde hair and black lightning?" Umi asked as Kaminari pointed at himself and Umi nodded. "I'm Denki Kaminari, Ms. Umi," Kaminari said as he bowed out of respect and intimidation as he felt his heart pumping in an unnatural way as he was extremely nervous. "Denki Kaminari. Child, I'm going to say this to you and please don't spite me for what I'm about to say." Umi warned him as he gulped down the lump on his throat and nodded. She sighed as she told him her thoughts. "I believe that you should no longer pursue being a hero." "What? 33rd POV, Umi. Why would you say that?" Izuku asked as he had a face of disbelief. Kaminari here is one of the most likely students to become a hero in our class. Didn't you see how he handled all of your water knights during your assessment? That is precisely why I advise him to no longer pursue being a hero. The way he handles things using his quirk for hero purposes can lead to his death. Umi said that shocked everyone as they widened their eyes and Kaminari cowering on Hitoshi's side. What do you mean that it could lead to my death? Kaminari asked as he could feel his heart almost about to jump out of his chest. By my observations, when you overuse your quirk it temporarily short-circuit your brain, correct? Kaminari then nodded as Umi sighed. If you keep on short-circuit your brain, then it will most likely cause you brain damage or even destroy some of, or even all of your brain cells that all, at some point will lead to your death. I predict you won't live past your 20s if this keeps on going. Everyone gasped at her prediction that Kaminari won't live to pass his 20s. This caused Kaminari to fall into tears as Hitoshi comforted him in his embrace. His tears drop into the water, making a few ripples as others look at him in sympathy and pity. Wait, isn't there a way for this to be all resolved? Every problem has its own solutions, right? Izuku asked, pleading for a way to help his friend. There is no solution that I can think of rather than limiting his quirk in order for him to not short-circuit. But limiting one's power can become a liability in a fight, hence that is not a favorable solution. So, Kaminari has to give up being a hero. Jiro asked with a sad expression. If he desperately wants to become a hero, then he may, but that decision will surely lead to him reducing the life that he has and he will be closer to death's door compared to you all. Umi said in a straightforward manner, not wanting to beat around the bush since this concerning a person's life. I do have another idea for this problem to be solved. Umi said that gathered everyone's attention. What is it? I'll do anything if it means that I won't die early and still get to be a hero. Kaminari said with a determined face as we wiped away the tears staining his cheeks. First, let me ask you a question. What is your deepest and truest longing in life? Speak truthfully and tell me what your heart the most. Umi explained as Kaminari looked surprised to be asked of such a question. Kaminari pondered for a little bit before giving his answer to Umi. He was always inspired by heroes when he was young. A hero that he once saw when he was a child, helped saved everyone and defeated villains. What he the most is that for him to become a hero. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a hero. Even if I'm not the smartest or the strongest, I still want to be a hero and I will do everything I can to become one. Kaminari declared as he made a fist with his arm and has the most determined face that anyone had ever seen before. His friends smiled at the background and felt the fiery determination he had. They all felt inspired by his resolve as Umi looked satisfied with his answer as well. She gave him a proud smile. What determination! I am quite pleased with your answer, Denki Kaminari. What I am about to offer to you as a way to solve your problem is called a wish orb. Umi said as she turned serious all of a sudden. A wish orb? Like what you gave Izuku to give his powers? Kaminari questioned as Umi nodded. You are correct, child, this is what gave Izuku his powers. The wish orb grants the person what he wishes and grants them, if they are worthy to be granted. Not only is it called the wish orb, but also the orb of judgment. If the orb deems that what you wish for as selfish and greedy, then it will destroy your body and soul. They all gasped at the part where Kaminari could possibly die. They all looked at him on what he was going to reply as he too had a shocked face. Kaminari started thinking and weighing the odds as well as the pros and cons. He looked deep in thought. I am not forcing you, child. This is a matter of life and death. Granting a wish come in a great price, so I understand if you would want to think about it more and she was suddenly cut off by Kaminari when he gave her an answer. I'll do it. I'll take the chance. Kaminari stated as everyone gasped. Dude, you can't just decide these stuff on a whim. It's about you life, dude. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said out of concern. Yes, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 is right. You don't need to rush to give an answer. If you take the orb then you could possibly die. Jiro followed up having the same concern as well. We are not sure if the orb will actually grant you your wish or just kill you straight up. Mina said to him. Denki, are you really sure about this? You could die and you know that Hitoshi was cut off in his rambling when Kaminari covered his mouth with his hand. I'm sure about this, Hito. I really would like to become a hero. And be a hero alongside you and all of our friends. I'm taking this chance. If it means me not dying before I even reach 30 and becoming a hero, then I would take it in a heartbeat. Kaminari spoke out as he had a sincere smile on his face that showed no fear nor any regrets. Hitoshi only sighed before smiling back to him. I'll support you then, he said as it gave Kaminari the courage he needed, and he gave him a warm hug as Hitoshi hugged back. Others who were watching them all had sparkling eyes as they watched the two of them being sweet with each other. Izuku had small tears in his eyes as he wiped them dramatically. While watching his brother's blooming love life, Katsuki just clicked his tongue as he looked away. In doing so, he brought Izuku even close to him and wrapped an arm around his waist. The girls had their phones out and took a pic of the two of them officially shipping their relationship. The guys of the group gave them a thumbs up and approving of their relationship as they as well took pictures of them. Well then, child, are you going to accept the wish orb? Umi asked as Kaminari gave a nod. Then follow me. She started moving along the spring waterfall as Kaminari followed her. The others followed them closely behind since they all were curious. They all were eventually led to a cave with sparkling pink crystals decorated all over that lit up the cave brightly. She then got into the innermost of the cave and started coiling around herself and faced Kaminari. Then let us begin, child. I wish you the best of luck. Umi said to him as he nodded. I then present to you the wish orb, or also known as the orb of judgment. A glowing gold orb then manifested on her head as it shined brightly in front of him. He as well as his classmates squinted their eyes as the light was almost blinding. Kaminari then started reaching for the orb with his right hand as he touched it with his finger. His eyes and mouth started to glow a golden light as the light enveloped his body entirely. Kaminari opened his eyes and saw that he was no longer at the cave, but rather in a field of green grass. He looked around and saw the grass stretched throughout the land, and no trees nor life can be seen in the distance. He was merely standing in an open field. He looked up and saw the thunderclouds up above him that roared thunderous noises that echoed all over the area. The dark clouds made the whole area darker than it usually would have been. Suddenly, as he looked up, something that was glowing a golden glow was descending up in the sky. As Kaminari looked closer, it was the wish orb. Soon, the orb descended and was now in front of him. He felt the orb calling to him as he touched it with both of his hands. The orb then started to shine brightly than it has ever before. The bright light soon enveloped the land as it radiated a light energy. A burst of wind followed as it blew through Kaminari's golden locks as well as the grass on the ground. The orb then stepped back from Kaminari before rushing forwards and crashed into his forehead. Kaminari stumbled back after the orb hit his forehead as he absorbed the orb in his body. He was shocked with what just happened as the whole scenery became quiet. Suddenly, roaring thunders can be heard in the background as Kaminari saw the clouds displaying lightning bolts. One then struck Kaminari as a continuous yellow lightning surged throughout his body. He started screaming due to the pain as he fell down to his knees. The lightning continued until it stopped and Kaminari tried to catch his breath, but his eyes soon closed as he fell unconscious. When he opened his eyes, he first saw Hitoshi's face extremely worried. He looked around and saw that he was surrounded by all of his friends as he blinked his eyes to adjust to the light. Oh my gosh, he's back. He's alive. Mina announced as everyone sighed in relief and picked him up to give him a warm hug. Dude, we were all so worried about you. Tetsu said. Yeah. You started glowing and stuff and you fell down and you looked like you were dead. Kirishima said as he hugged him tightly. It was indeed worrisome. Shoto commented. I'm glad that you okay, Denki. I thought you were a Ghana. Hitoshi said as he wrapped his arms around him tightly. I'm fine, Hito. You need to let me breathe. Kaminari cat out as he was being crushed by Hitoshi's hug. He then gave him a sorry and let him go. It looks like the orb has judged you as worthy of being granted of your wish. Now the question is, what has changed? Umi said as Kaminari looked at his hands. Why don't we test it out? Izuku suggested as they nodded and made their way out of Umi's cave. Now, your previous quirk only allowed you to emit your electricity to surround yourself, and that made you unable to control it. Let's see what has changed. Momo said as Kaminari nodded. Kaminari then stepped forward and into an open section of the spring waterfall. He then took a deep breath as he used his power. He first felt the surge of electricity that was spreading throughout his body. The squad saw that sparks of electricity were sparking all over his body. He then moved his arms forward as strong surge of electricity shot out of his hands. It shot a tree down in half as the trunk was set on fire. Kaminari looked amazed by this and started jumping up and down. The others had open mouths and wide eyes expressions at the display of power. Looks like you can now control the flow of your electricity throughout your body and is no longer limited in just emitting it all over your body in an aura kind of way like before. You can now basically manipulate electricity in simpler terms. Momo explained after observing the test run. Well done, child. I can now say that you can now become a hero without complications. Umi said in a sweet and caring way while having a motherly smile on her face. Kaminari looked ecstatic as he can now become a hero without him complicating his health and well-being. He was now a step closer to his dreams, and alongside him was his friends that would support him no matter what. They would become heroes together, and in order for them to become one, they must first surpass the hurdle, which is the sports festival event. Now, Umi's training begins. Third POV. The Izuku squad's training under the guidance of Umi began. She had a plan on top of her head after the assessment she had on the students, and she has now formulated a plan on what they need to improve on. She wanted them to learn and improve as much as possible under a short amount of time. They only had 2 weeks before the sports festival begins, and she wanted them to succeed. So for 2 weeks, after school they would all go to the spring waterfall to train with Umi. They all had permissions with their parents and guardians, and they all agreed with it. They just didn't told them that they were being trained by a dragon. That was now their routine until the start of the festival. They all were seriously tired and exhausted because of Umi's hellish training every day. They would train with what Umi wanted them to improve on as she oversees all of their progress. She would watch over them with hawk eyes to make sure that they are doing their best to become the best that they can be on becoming pro-heroes in the future. After Kaminari's wish orb and him changing his power entirely, they all went home as the next day will be the official start of their training. When the next day arrived, they all boarded the train after school and made their way to the spring waterfall. Izuku opened the portal to Umi's domain where she was already waiting for them. The squad readied all of their belongings as they were wearing their workout clothes. They also brought extra clothes to change in and a swimsuit since that is what Izuku advised them to bring. Now Umi's training officially began. First, she told them on what they needed to improve on so that they are aware of what is to come in their training. Shoto, in Umi's opinion, was already powerful and strong with his ability to control both his ice and fire efficiently. She wanted him to improve on getting a much more extreme temperature when using his fire and for his ice to reach an even more freezing temperatures. She also wanted him to improve his hand-to-hand combat abilities. Momo was very intelligent and highly analytical and observant on what Umi can discern from her test. Her ability to create any non-living items is very powerful and useful quirk in Umi's opinion. Umi wants her to improve on the speed rate of her creation time since she can't waste time when in battle. She also wanted her to learn other weapons other than her bow staff, so that she won't be limited to only one weapon when she has the ability to create any weapon she wants. This would also include on improving her combat abilities. Umi was very fond with Mina's bright personality because she can easily raise the morale of her teammates when things get rough. For Mina, her training includes improving her quirk in general. Umi wanted her to improve the solubility and viscosity of her quirk to its full potential. She also learned of her amazing dancing skills and suggested incorporating it in her fighting style. With 𝗳𝗏, he had a very good quirk for support in combat. His tapes are very useful in creating traps and for mobility. His quirks works best in capturing enemies and whatnot in what Umi can observe about the nature of his quirk. She wanted him to strengthen his tapes in order for them to not easily break, as well as improving his tape's length in order to reach greater distance. Umi also wanted him to use his quirk to incorporate it in his fighting style just like with Mina's dancing. Kirishima and 𝗬𝗪𝗪 both had similar quirks in what Umi can observe. They only had small difference between them, but nonetheless similar quirks. Umi wanted Kirishima to further enhance his hardening quirk by having him spar with 𝗬𝗪𝗪. This will also improve 𝗬𝗪𝗪's steel quirk so that they will become durable and even more resistant. They both would also need to improve their hand-to-hand combat since their quirks are for close-range battles. �'ģiro had a quirk fitting for scouting enemies and their movements because she could hear micro sounds that a normal human being wouldn't hear, with the use of her 𝗳𝗿𝗃𝗁𝗃 earlobes. Umi wanted her to improve her hearing ability and to be able to pick up even the slightest sounds in a large covering area. She also wanted her to improve her sound attacks and improve her hand-to-hand combat abilities since she can't always rely on her quirk. And lastly, Kaminari. Kaminari needed to learn his power from scratch since the whole nature of his quirk changed because of the wish orb. With the help of Umi, Momo, and Izuku, because they're the most intelligent out of all of them, he learned that he can now manipulate the electricity stored in his body. He no longer risked the chance of him electrocuting his own allies like before because his quirk no longer limits him from freely manipulating the electricity inside him. He describes his quirk as the same powers of Pikachu in the anime that he is obsessed with that showed during the pre-quirk era, Pokemon. His drawbacks have now changed and he no longer fries his brain when he overuses his quirk. Instead, he now gets temporary paralysis when his power is overused. To him, it was better than having his brain fried and have him the possibility of dying before he even reaches his 30s. So Umi wants him to learn how to control the voltage of his electricity so that it won't go haywire and have him lose control. He also needs to learn how to properly aim his attacks and not accidentally hit his allies. He also needs to improve his combat abilities. Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki all had the same training that they had during their 10 months training with Umi. But this time, it was now 10 times harder than it was before. Their training began and after the first day, they all collapsed on the ground while like dogs. They did what she had told them to work on and she made sure that they all were doing it right. Umi also wanted them to improve their upper and lower bodies and that is where they used their swimsuits. They all had to swim 30 laps on a very long pool to improve the said upper and lower bodies. This also increased their stamina, speed, and endurance. And before they all leave, Umi will have them fight her water knights to see some improvements. She already have guessed that there won't be much improvement on the first day, but she just wanted to see where their skills are at now. Because of this training, they all looked visibly tired and exhausted when they all come to school. They all were so tired, to the point that they would accidentally sleep in class. This was all noticed by the class as they saw their tired looks and eye bags. They all asked them why they all were tired and they shrugged it off and told them that they were just training. During their 2 weeks, have seen them all improve greatly. Shoto's flames have reached hotter temperatures and his ice were freezing to the point where it can cause people to be trapped by them to have hypothermia. He also learned how to use both quirks at the same time, but still hasn't completely it. His hand-to-hand combat has also improved. Momo has learned many new weapons and has now a vast knowledge on how to use them. She has taken a liking on using spears since they were practically the same with the bow staff. She learned how to wield the speak properly under the guidance of Umi, of course. She has also learned how to create objects while in battle when she would spar with Umi's water knights. 𝗬𝗪 has utilized his quirk by using them to place traps and learned to wrap his tapes around enemies to immobilize them. His tape strength have improved since they are much more durable and are harder to remove. He also learned how to use his tails in combat when Kaminari told him to watch a Spider-Man movie since his and Spider-Man's powers were the same. Because of that, he has learned to use his tapes just like Spider-Man's webs. Kirishima's hardening vastly improved with 𝗬𝗪𝗪 hitting him over and over again to make his hardening even more durable. 𝗬𝗪𝗪's steel also have improved as it was much more durable than it was before. They also have improved their fighting abilities and combat strengths with the number of spars that they both had during their 2-week training. 𝗲𝗄's hearing has vastly improved as well. She could hear even the tiniest drop of water as her hearing became exceptional to catch even the smallest of sounds in a large area. Her sound attacks also became even stronger as she would bring a speaker with her so that she could plug in her earphone jacks. Her sounds became louder and violent, to the point where your ears would bleed if you listened too much. She could even control the sound to become lower or higher, depending on her. And Kaminari has now his new ability. They all had to inform the school of his new power and why it changed, and they accepted it. Kaminari also requested him wanting to change the name of his quirk to Lightning, which it was approved and has been changed in the quirk database. They also made up a lie in order to hide the wish orb and Umi's existence by having him say that his quirk evolved, which was pretty rare to happen but was still possible. He can now control the voltage of his electricity to his liking, as he had now that aspect of his powers. He learned that he can somewhat manipulate the shape of his electricity, as Izuku pitched in the idea, but sadly that idea hasn't made to life just yet. He did, however, learn that he can shoot his electricity all over his body, and it's not only limited to his hands. With this newfound information, he used this and incorporated it into his hand-to-hand combats. Every strike that he makes can now shock his opponent with his electricity, as he covers his hands and feet with them to add a shocking strike. Let's just pretend Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki trained like what they did at Chapter 12, since I'm too lazy to put their whole training again. Tongue sticking out. After 2 weeks, Umi can finally see that they all have vastly improved compared to before they started their training. Their quirks have improved, their physical abilities have all been boosted, and most important thing out of all is that they all have bonded and are even closer than they were once before. This is important for Umi, since she believes that no one can face every challenge that lies ahead of them alone. Sometimes you would need the assistance of your most closest friends and allies to help you overcome your demons and challenges. Umi is happy to see their bonds have become even tighter than they were before. Because of her training, they learned how to trust one another and understand each other deeply. It was now the day before the sports festival, and everyone just finished their training. All of them looked worn out, but they all got used to their exhaustion after training. You could see that they all have improved with the confidence they have on their faces and sheer determination radiating off of each one of them. Congratulations, children. You all have survived and conquered my training regiment. From what I have seen and observed, you all have now the capabilities to reach the top of the festival in 2 days' time. I am proud to say that all of you all are my students. Umi praised them as she gave them a noble bow. They all suddenly felt embarrassed with her sudden compliments, as they blushed slightly. No. We should be the ones to say that we're happy to be able to be trained by you, Umi. Izuku said as she rubbed her scales and gave her a warm smile. Yes, we all should be thanking you. We would not have reached this kind of level of strength if not for your guidance and your wisdom. Momo said to her while giving a gentle smile. We have reached an even greater understanding with our quirks and capabilities. For that we thank you. Shoto spoke out as he bowed before her. Everyone soon followed except for Katsuki. He gave a frown and clicked his teeth before turning away. Hitoshi then smacked his head really hard and pushed him down and forced him to bow in front of Umi as Katsuki struggled to get back up. Others laughed at his antics as Izuku gave him a giggle that made him blush slightly. I thank you all for your compliments and flattery. I wish you all the best of luck on the upcoming festival, and be sure to give it your all. She told then as they were inspired by her words. But out-training is not over yet, children. Umi said menacingly and made them all feel intimidated as her icy blue eyes flashed before them. What do you mean, you dragon? You said we could go home after training. We're done now and we're going to rest tomorrow. What do you mean that training's not done yet? Katsuki said, demanding for an answer as he growled in annoyance at her. Well, child, in the end we need to see if you all really indeed improved or if it was all just a waste of time. Umi said as they all stiffened up and felt a little bit scared because of her words. It's time for an exam. Third POV. Everyone looked surprised at what Umi just said to them. They were not informed of any type of exam at all and were confused to why there was one. Exam? What do you mean exam, Umi? Izuku asked the dragon as the others wondered the same thing as well. This is an exam to see what you all have learned during your training with me. Have you all brought your hero costumed like I asked you all to bring? Umi asked as they all nodded. It took a lot of convincing, but we managed to bring them with us. We just had to promise not to wear them in public. Momo said as they all took out their hero costume cases out of their bags. Good, now change into them and meet me at my cave. There, we will start your exam. Umi then slithered away from them. The teens all looked at each other confused and scared for Umi's exam. They all have experienced her grueling training and they can't imagine the test she has in store for them. They all quickly changed into their hero costumes as they made their way to Umi's cave. Almost all of them have changed their hero costumes in some way and have added some extra support gear. Momo changed her outfit entirely since she thought it was too revealing after an incident that just happened last week. A student from Class 1B, named Mineta Minoru, grabbed her bub after their heroics class. Class 1A finished their heroics class and they passed by Class 1B. That is where Mineta saw Momo's costume and grabbed her bub and started squeezing them. She screamed and punched him off of her. She got so angry that she created a rope and hung Mineta up like a piñata. She then created a bow staff and smacked him repeatedly. Let's just say that Mineta get what he deserves and was immediately rushed over to Recovery Girl's office. That is when the class knew not to mess with her. She ultimately decided to just change her costume and she was helped by Izuku. Izuku also suggested to have the support course make some sort of display hologram attached to her wrist so that she could use it to take notes of the configurations of her items that she wants to create. It will also help in visualizing and help her create stuff more efficiently. Momo wasn't the only one to have a support gear as Mina also had as well. She asked Izuku on advice on how she could shoot her acids in longer distances and he suggested having a shooter attached to her arms. That is where Power Loader suggested the gauntlets that have shooters in them that will help in her Ling range attacks. Some changed their costume designs like Shoto, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Jiro. Shoto changed some of his costume design to better help him in battle and in controlling his temperature while using his quirk. Kaminari and Kirishima changed their costumes entirely and designed a new one. Kaminari changed his costume to better represent his new lightning quirk and also had a visor and communicator. Kirishima changed his costume and exposed his abs and muscled arms for his hardening quirk. Jiro changed the color schemes of her costume to have electric blue and purple colors instead of just having all black. She also has a support gear called Amplifier Jack. This support gear helps her in amplifying the sound and vibrations of her heartbeat, releasing more powerful sonic waves. Katsuki changed his costume too and added long sleeves to his costume and covered his muscled arms, much to Izuku's dismay. Izuku, Hitoshi, Siro, and Tetsu didn't change their costumes at all and were already satisfied with them. Now that they're all changed into their costumes, they all made their way into Umi's cave. All of them were quite nervous to what is to come as they saw Umi at the innermost of the cave, waiting for them to arrive. Now, what are we gonna do, dragon? So we can go home and sleep for F's sake. Katsuki said as he groaned in front of the dragon. Patience, child, I am about to explain your exam. It is all simple really. All you need to do is to gather some pearls. Umi explained. Pearls? They all asked in unison as Umi nodded her head. There will be 3 pearls, all that you must gather. They are located in 3 different areas and are guarded by creatures that I have created. All you need to do is to defeat them and take the pearls. Sound easy enough, so let's go. Kaminari exclaimed as the other looked at him to shut Yuo since Umi wasn't finished explaining things yet. He hushed up and apologized. You all will be randomly divided into those 3 areas. 2 teams will have 4 members and the other will have only just 3. After you complete your objectives, you all will meet and will use the 3 pearls to open a gate to end your test. Is that all clear? They all nodded as Umi smiled. Then let trial by water begin. She announced as holes appeared from below the teens as they fell through them, screaming while being dropped down into who knows where. Mina was screaming while she falls down a tunnel that leads to one of the 3 areas. She reached the end of the hole and dropped down on her butt. She rubbed her aching butt as she got up and looked around her. She saw that she was with Katsuki, Momo, and Siro. Where are we? Mina asked as Siro answered her with a scared and nervous voice. I think we're on a pirate ship, Siro said as he gulped a lump on his throat. They all took a closer look and saw that they were stepping on wooden planks with some broken off. A flag of a skull with bones can be seen sailed up as they looked into the far distance and saw nothing but open sea. There they concluded that they were actually in a pirate ship. "We are in a ship. But where's the pearl?" Momo said as they heard footsteps approaching them. They turned to see the source of the footsteps and saw a skeletal figure with a pirate captain's outfit. His body was no longer there as it was only bones and nothing more. His eyes were missing as well as his nose, and around his neck was a necklace with the pearl. "Coming for my treasured pearl? Well, you will have to get it of my neck before I let you all walk the plank and swim with the sharks." The pirate captain stated as a group of skeletons in pirate outfits, holding guns and swords surrounded the teens. "Dang dragon," Katsuki mumbled out. On the other side, Hitoshi was dropped down into the other area of Umi's exam. He dropped down on his 2 feet and looked around and saw that he was stranded in an island. He then looked up and saw Jiro, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and Kirishima dropped down at the same time in the sky. "That hurts," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 commented as he get himself up. "Where are we? Are we in an island?" Jiro yelled out loud as she realized where they were. "Seems like it. Now let's find that stupid pearl and get out of here," Hitoshi said as they all nodded. "But where is the pearl?" Jiro asked as Kirishima called out for them in the distance. "Brothers, I found a cave," Kirishima yelled as they made their way to him. They approached Kirishima and saw the cave that he pointed at. It looked extremely dark, and from the outside, it looked like the cave was going deep underground and into water. "Now let's get in there and find that diamond pearl and get out of here. I want to go home and sleep," Hitoshi grumbled as he made his way down into the cave. The rest followed behind him nervously as they dipped into the water. Surprisingly, they were breathing normally and can even talk underwater. They thought that it must be Umi's doings. They were swimming in the dark cave as Hitoshi was taking the lead, but it seems like they're not alone. "Bro, did you just touch me?" Kirishima asked as he felt something brush over his arms. "No dude," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said to him, but soon he also felt something touch him. "Did you touch me? 'Cause I just feel like you touched me," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said as Kirishima denied his claims. "What are you morons whispering about? Instead of using your loud mouths, why don't you use your eyes and look for the stupid pearl?" Hitoshi said, scolding the two. But something kept touching us," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 spoke out as he looked a bit scared, as well as Kirishima. "Geez, you big babies. Jiro, can you hear anything moving around us?" Hitoshi asked as Jiro nodded. Jiro then closed her eyes and pressed her headphones on her ears to listen to the sounds around them. She then heard multiple movements around them as she gasped and caught everyone's attention. "What's wrong?" Hitoshi asked as he saw Jiro's scared face. "There's something moving in the waters," Jiro said, and Hitoshi asked where. Jiro took a big gulp and said, "They're all around us," she said in a whisper. That is when a source of light appeared out of nowhere in the cave, and it revealed fishes with razor-sharp teeth surrounding all of them. They all had white eyes as they glared at the four, ready to eat them alive. Izuku, Shoto, and Kaminari all fell at the same time as they all dropped into a raging sea. Izuku choked on some water as he searches for his friends that dropped with him. He then heard Kaminari's voice asking for help as he swam towards him. Kaminari was fighting to stay afloat as waves kept crashing on his face, making it hard to open his eyes because of the salty content of the water. He then felt hands wrapped around him and opened his eyes slightly and saw Izuku. He held on to him tightly as they both battled the waves. Izuku then used his powers to cover themselves with water and protect them in the meantime. They were now on a sphere of water as Kaminari coughed out some of the water that entered his nose and mouth. "Where are we?" Kaminari asked as he kept coughing while Izuku rubbed his back. "I don't know, but I think we're just in an open sea." "Wait, where is Shoto?" Izuku asked as they both widened their eyes. They lost Shoto. They looked around on their water sphere, in search of the missing Shoto. Kaminari then saw a giant ice floating, and there he saw Shoto holding on to it. Kaminari told Izuku as he used the water to pull Shoto towards them. They then got him inside their water sphere as he took deep breaths. "Thanks, I would have drowned if it weren't for you guys," Shoto said, thanking them for saving him. Izuku approached Shoto and patted him on the back. "That's what friends are for." Now let's go find that pearl and dash. Izuku was cut off when 𝗵𝗃 suddenly screamed out of fear. What's wrong, 𝗵𝗃? Shoto asked as 𝗵𝗃 shakingly pointed something from behind them. Izuku and Shoto looked slowly behind them and saw an eye staring right at them. The eye then blinked before it disappeared into the water's darkness. Suddenly, they were being launched up into the air as a gush of high-pressure water appeared from below them. They were now hundreds of feet in the air as they were screaming for their lives. Izuku's water sphere was destroyed with the water blast as they all were now unprotected. They were getting closer to the water as Shoto used his ice and created a giant iceberg that they all landed on safely. What the F was that? 𝗵𝗃 shouted as he got up on his feet. That was like a sea monster, dude. That was huge. 𝗵𝗃 exclaimed. Whatever that is, must have the pearl. Shoto concluded. Suddenly, they heard a howl coming from below the waters. There they saw the creature that they must face. The creature is shown to be a massive whale as it jumped out of the water and back into the waters. It created a giant ripple in the surface as it pushed Shoto's iceberg back a few feet. We're fighting 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, Izuku said as he had a confused look. There it begins. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 exam. The trial by water. 33rd POV. The trial by water begins and all of our protagonists are in deep waters. All of them trying to prove that they have indeed improved under the influence and guidance of none other than 𝗵𝗃, the serpentine dragon. The trial by water consists of gathering pearls in order for them to pass and beat the trial. Each pearls are hidden in 3 areas, guarded by creatures that 𝗵𝗃 created that will challenge her students. All of them are separated into 3 groups, battling the creatures of the sea. Stranded in a ship, surrounded by nothing but the sea as it stretches into the horizon. Katsuki, Momo, Mina, and 𝗧𝗵𝗃, all stuck at a pirate ship as they battle their way to retrieve the pearl. The creatures that are holding on to the pearl are pirates in bones and nothing more. Wielding swords and guns, they're not going to let them steal their treasure. The skeleton crew were being commanded by the pirate captain as he wore the pearl necklace with pride on his neck. If they were to lose the battle, they will be walking off the plank and will be swimming with the sharks. In an island, there lies a cave that leads to an underground cavern, filled with sea water. No light can enter the cavern as it is shrouded by nothing but darkness. Hitoshi, Jiro, Kirishima, and Tetsu all swam into the cavern, in search of the pearl that they are sought to find and retrieve. All goes well as they were breathing normally and can even talk underwater. They suspect it to be 𝗵𝗃's doings. It was a normal underwater dive until it was not. Because in the darkness they're not alone. Fishes of blue and white surrounded them in the cavern with razor-sharp teeth that can bite into flesh and bones. Jiro heard their movements in the water as an unknown light source appeared that revealed the fishes to them. Ready to take a bite. Lost at sea is what can perfectly describe Izuku, 𝗵𝗃, and Shoto's situation. Dropped into the raging sea as they battle the hungry waves that want to swallow them whole and bring them down into the depths of the ocean. Izuku found 𝗵𝗃 almost drowning as he saved him and created a sphere of water to protect them from ocean storm. Soon they found Shoto floating in an ice that he created as he tries not to be swept away by the waves. All of them were safe, until they were not. They were met with a giant eye as it launched them up into the air, destroying Izuku's sphere that served as their only protection. Luckily, they were saved when Shoto created a giant iceberg that they landed safely on. Soon, they met their enemy as it turned out to be a whale of blue hue with luminescent white lines marking its whole body. The whale is as large as 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 in the Bible as it reached a whole 90 feet in length. Such a creature, will they be able to defeat it and retrieve the pearl? 𝗵𝗃 is in her cave with an orb as she oversees every area that they have landed on. Watching them as she made sure that no one actually dies during this trial by water exam that she has created. She watched all of them as she gave out a smile. Show me what you all can do, young heroes in training. 𝗵𝗃 said as she had high hopes for all of them. Katsuki, Momo, Mina, and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 were all surrounded by skeleton pirates with guns and swords. Momo looked around and saw no escape as they were nowhere near prepared to fight yet, and they were outnumbered greatly. Momo then looked below them and had an idea to escape. Everyone, come closer to each other. Momo whispered as they all moved towards each other, following her instructions. 𝗵𝗃, melt the wooden planks around us so that we'll fall down to the bottom floor of the ship. She whispered into 𝗵𝗃's ear as she nodded. The pirates took notice and stepped closer towards them as well, readying their weapons. All four of them tensed up before 𝗵𝗃 melted the wooden planks around them with her acid and made them fall into the bottom floor. Get them? The pirate captain screamed as his crew chased after them. The four of them started running through the ship as the skeleton crew started jumping down the hole that 𝗵𝗃 created and began chasing them. Momo created a giant bulletproof shield from her exposed back and shielded her friends from the bullets that the skeletons were shooting. What are we gonna do? 𝗵𝗃 whined as they ran through the ship. 𝗵𝗃 then turned around and started creating acids from her body and shot them at the skeletons. Some dodges them, but for those who were unlucky, their whole body started dissolving into the acid. We need to gather our thoughts first and think of a plan to defeat them. We can't handle all of them at once, they're too many. Momo said as she covered their backs from flying bullets. Then I'll buy us some time, 𝗳𝗏 stated as he turned back to fave the skeletons. 𝗳𝗏 started to shoot his tapes all over the walls and stick them to the floor. He was covering every inch of the area with his tape traps to stop the skeletons from advancing any further. His plan worked perfectly, as the skeletons were trapped by his tapes and were struggling to break free. Good work, soy sauce. Katsuki commented as 𝗳𝗏 had a face of disbelief as well as the others. Did you just compliment me? 𝗳𝗏 questioned with a tone of disbelief. Katsuki got annoyed and smacked his head really hard. So what? It's just AF compliment you dumbass. He shouted as he pointed at a door in front of them. There you extras. Let's get in there and figure this SHT out. They opened the door and immediately got inside. They locked it and took a breather as they fell down on their butts, after running away from hundreds of pirate skeletons. What do we do now? 𝗲 was cut off when Momo suddenly covered her mouth with her hand. Momo then placed her finger on her lips, gesturing for all of them to keep quiet. They all were confused until they heard footsteps coming from above them, and then heard the pirate captain's voice. They heard him yelling at his crew for losing them and ordered to search for them again. He's right above us, Momo stated as she kept pointing on the ceiling above them. What's our plan then? 𝗳𝗏 asked. Let's just explode the ceiling and go after that pirate extra, Katsuki suggested as he had a wide grin on his face. Don't you think that's a little reckless? Said 𝗵𝗃 as she raised her eyebrow at Katsuki's plan. No, I agree with Bakugo's plan. It will be more of a surprise attack. That way we will fight them when they are vulnerable and grab the pearl from the pirate's necklace. Momo stated. I'll handle close range and you 𝗵𝗃 handle in range attacks with your new support gear. 𝗵𝗃 then winked and gave Momo a thumbs up. 𝗳𝗏, you try to trap as many of them with your tapes and support us if needed. 𝗳𝗏 nodded. And Bakugo just be you and blow everyone up? 𝗵𝗃 stated as Katsuki had a wide grin. Then let's bust this joint, Katsuki stated as he placed his palms and made an explosion. The pirates heard the sudden explosion as they turned to see all four of them jumped out of the hole that the explosion created. They all were caught off guard. 𝗵𝗃 started using her acid shooter gauntlets and rained down a plethora of acid bullets that hit multiple skeleton pirates. Her acid started melting their bones. She then covered her feet with her acid as she increased her mobility. She started using her dancing skills and spun around herself while shooting an array of acid bullets to enemies near her. Momo got in the front lines and created a silver spear as she gracefully overpowered the sword-wielding enemies. She twisted her body and dodged sword attacks as she sliced them up with her silver spear. She then saw a skeleton about to shoot 𝗵𝗃 when she threw her spear like a javelin and impaled the monster. She then used her 3D hologram display and searched for the design and structure of a handgun that she took notes of. She then created two as she was dual-wielding them and shot the skeleton pirates in the head. As she was rolling over the ground in style, 𝗳𝗏 taped multiple skeletons together, trapping them as he pulled his tape and started swinging them all over the place. He then threw them at a group of skeletons as they crashed and their bones scattered all over the place. He then set up multiple tape traps on the ship's deck as she caught some of them. He also wrapped some in his tape and hung them on the flagpole as they were dangling in the air. The pirate captain was in shock and disbelief as he was shaking in range. He was about to join the fight when a sudden explosion occurred in front of his face. He was launched back and fell on his back as he looked to see that the explosion came from Katsuki. "It's over," Katsuki declared. The pirate captain then looked behind the teen and saw his whole crew was defeated. Some were hanging in the walls by tapes as they were dangling in the air. Others dissolved due to the acid from Mina's gauntlets as they were left with nothing but melted bones. And some have bullet wounds on their heads and their bodies were destroyed and crushed. The pirate captain had a defeated face as his crew were all defeated by them. He suddenly felt his necklace being pulled off of his neck as he saw Katsuki took it off of him. Katsuki then grinned before he exploded the captain's face as his skull scattered all over the navigation deck. In the underground caverns, Hitoshi, Jiro, Kirishima, and Tetsu were surrounded by fish beasts with razor-sharp teeth. All four of them were back-to-back as they were eyeing their enemies down as they were ready to take a bite off of them. A fish beast then initiated first as it swam in incredible speed towards Jiro. The fish was inches away from her as it was suddenly pulled back by Hitoshi's capture bands and was wrapped around before thrown into a rock as it fell lifeless on the ground. "Thanks, I was about to be fish food," Jiro said, thanking Hitoshi. The other fish beasts started attacking them as well. Kirishima was suddenly attacked by a fish as it opened its razor-sharp mouth to bite him. He used his hardening and punched it as another appeared and caught its mouth, then threw it at a wall. A fish appeared from behind him as it took a bite of his shoulder. Bug was unharmed because of how much his hardening had improved. He took the fish by its tail and threw it to the side of a rock. Hitoshi wrapped multiple fishes with his capture bands as he smashed them together. One got close to him as he kicked its mouth, then wrapped it in his capture bands before throwing it to another that was swimming towards him. He was using the martial arts that his dad taught him to defend himself from the fish beast's attacks, kicking them and punching them in the face, while wrapping them in his capture bands. Jiro was using her amplifier jacks and stretched them towards multiple fishes and sent a sonic wave of her heartbeat that sent them all back. They started shaking uncontrollably as they can't handle the vibrations. They then started floating to the surface. Another school of fish beasts started swimming up to her as this time she inserted her earphone jacks to her speakers. She sent a sonic wave that was so loud that they all were blown away into a wall. A fish then appeared behind Jiro as she didn't react in time. It opened its gaping maw to bite her, but was blocked by Tetsu's steel arm in the nick of time. Its teeth was shattered when it bit down on Tetsu's arm as he punched the fish in its head. Fish beasts started gathering around him as he let them take a bite of him since he knew that they won't be able to penetrate his steel skin. He then punched them and kicked them left and right until they were all defeated. They continued to battle the fish beasts for what seemed like hours as they continued to appear. Soon enough, they defeated all of them as they all started under the water. "Okay, they're all gone, but where's the pearl?" Jiro asked as the unknown source of light suddenly disappeared and made the cavern dark once again. "Dude, who turned off the lights?" Tetsu asked as they were all shrouded in darkness. They kept calling one another as they were all lost in the dark. Eventually, they found each other and held hands as they swam blindly in the dark to find a source of light and to also find the pearl. Suddenly, they saw something shining in the dark as it was floating under the water. They looked closely and saw that it was a ball of light, brightly glowing in the cavern. They all felt some sort of relief as they started swimming towards the light. But Jiro felt something off as they were getting closer to the light. She was hearing a heartbeat coming from where the ball of light is, and she noticed that the light is getting bigger and bigger as if it was getting closer to them. She pulled back her team and made them all stop swimming. "What's wrong, Jiro?" Kirishima asked. "Is it just me or is that light coming straight for us? And why the F do I keep hearing a heartbeat from that thing?" Jiro said that alarmed the others immediately. Hitoshi took a look closer as he squinted his eyes to have a much more clear view of the light. There he noticed that the source of the light was moving because of the ripples in the water that was being created. The light got closer and there Hitoshi noticed the scales, the fin, and most importantly, the sharp teeth that was escaping from its mouth. He realized that it was not just a source of light, but it was another fish beast. Swim away! Hitoshi screamed out to the others. They were then met with a giant open mouth as it tried to eat one of them. They luckily swam away in time and escaped its giant maw. It then swam away in great speed as it disappeared in the dark, only revealing its glowing light ball. It was a gigantic anglerfish. Is everyone alright? Hitoshi asked as they all responded, except 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃. Where's 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗧? They then heard screaming from the distance as the giant anglerfish swam by them again. There they saw 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 in the fish's mouth as he was holding its mouth open, so that he won't be eaten. Dudes! Help me! He screamed for help as the fish tried to close its mouth. Hitoshi saw the struggling 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 as he quickly came up with a plan to save him and defeat the fish beast. Jiro, when it comes and pass by us again, hit it with your speakers and blast it away. I'll try to catch it with my capture bands, and Kirishima, you'll help me pull that fish. They both nodded. Soon the fish passed by again with 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 in its mouth. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 could feel its sharp teeth sinking into its steel hands as he held its mouth open as long as possible. He knew that this fish was much more powerful than the ones they faced before, since none of the fishes before can penetrate his steel skin, but this one definitely can. When the fish passed by them, Hitoshi started wrapping his capture bands around the creature's body with Kirishima right behind him, holding on to his waist. They got into the cavern's rocky floor as Kirishima planted his feet into the ground with his hardening, and both him and Hitoshi started pulling the fish to stop him from swimming. They were both using all of their strength. They stopped the fish from its track as it struggled to break free. Jiro then got in front of the fish and had a full view of what it looked like. It was colored in a musky green and its scales looked extremely slimy. Its eyes were plain white with no pupil and it had razor-sharp teeth. She saw 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 in its mouth, struggling to keep its mouth open, so that he won't be eaten. She immediately pulled him out of its mouth as it started to chomp, trying to get one of them. When 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 was being pulled out, he grabbed the ball of light in its antenna and realized that it was the pearl that they were looking for. After he grabbed the pearl, Jiro readied her attacks as 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 swam away from the fish. Jiro plugged her earphone jacks on her speakers and sent a loud sonic wave with intense vibrations and on max volume. The creature screamed after hearing the loud sound as it was blasted away. Hitoshi let go of the fish from his capture bands as it crashed into a wall. It hit the wall with great impact as a giant boulder fell down on top of it. They all were as they silently cheered for their victory. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃 held his hand up high and revealed the pearl that he got from the fish as they defeated the trial by water. Out in the sea, stranded in a floating iceberg, Izuku, Shoto, and Kaminari are to face off against a giant whale. They were observing the creature as it continued to swim up and back down into the water. They felt like it was taunting them. What do we do? That big butt whale must have the pearl, but how can we beat that thing? Kaminari said as he was getting extremely annoyed as they were only standing there in Shoto's iceberg. Patience, Kaminari. We need to see what it can do before we start to formulate a plan. Shoto explained as Kaminari groaned and plopped down on his back. He's right, Kami, we need to observe our enemies before we attack them. That's a strategic way of defeating our enemies. Izuku said. Then what have you observed then? Kaminari asked as Izuku started thinking with his hand on his chin. Well, it is definitely a large whale that can be compared to Moby Pages. It has a powerful attack that can send a huge blast of water and such. That's basically it. That's it. That's it. What you observed is what already can be basically seen. Even me, who's a moron, knew that. Well, then maybe you should do it then. You seem so smart now, so why don't you observe for us then? Since you know everything. Are you arguing with me right now while also mocking me? Seriously. I don't know. I thought you know everything, so you would already know that yes, I am arguing and mocking you. The two then started butting their heads together as they were gritting their teeth. Shoto, on the other hand, sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose as he was getting annoyed by the two of them not helping. He looked out into the sea and saw that the whale was floating at the surface of the water. He was confused to what it was doing, until he suddenly saw his blowhole glowing a blue glow. He squinted his eyes and widened them when a ball of mass energy suddenly came out of it. It was heading straight for them. "Get down!" Shoto screamed. He then pushed Kaminari and Izuku off as the blue ball crashed onto the iceberg. As it made contact, it exploded the iceberg and left nothing but chunks of ice. Izuku then made a water sphere around the three of them to protect them from the waves. "What the F was that?" Kaminari asked in frightened voice. "I don't know, but that blue ball thing came out of that whale. It must be one of its abilities." Shoto guessed. "We need to beat that thing right now before it does that again," Izuku said as they both nodded. Izuku then unsheathed the three of them from his water sphere and then started to go after the whale. Izuku started walking on water with him, holding on to Kaminari with his water arms. Shoto made an ice path with his right side as he slid through the surface of the water. They now rushed to defeat the whale. The whale saw them coming for him as he slapped his tail on the water and created a giant wave. The giant wave was heading straight for the three of them as it completely blocked their path. Shoto sent a giant ice wall to stop the raging wave, but it was overpowered when the wave cracked the ice. Shoto then lost his footing as the ice he was walking on broke into shards. He was about to fall into the water, but he was luckily caught by Izuku's water arm. Izuku was now carrying both Shoto and Kaminari as more humongous waves came straight for them. Izuku started absorbing the water from the sea and made him grow 2 more water arms as he used them to claw at the waves. He made water claws with his extra limbs and used them cave through the waves. But suddenly, a giant blue ball landed on top of them as it exploded, separating the three of them in the water. Shoto and Kaminari clawed their way up to stay afloat as the waves were crashing on their faces, making it hard to breathe. All hope seems lost until it was not. They both saw a dragon erupt from the ocean surface as it roared up in the sky. The dragon made entirely out of water. It was Izuku. Izuku, in his dragon form, searched for his friends that were drifting at sea. When he saw them, he used his talons and picked them up one by one, saving them from the sea. They were now flying in the air. They then saw the whale, floating in the surface of the water. Izuku took the opportunity and sent a hydro-vortex blast at the whale using his mouth. It shot the whale cleanly as it howled in pain. Kaminari and Shoto soon followed Izuku's attacks, with Kaminari using his new power and sent a huge voltage of electricity in the water, shocking the creature with the electricity. Shoto sent a high-temperature flame with his left side that burned the whale's skin. It screamed once again before retreating into the depths of the water. Izuku, Shoto, and Kaminari flew around the sea, in search of the whale. While searching, Izuku was suddenly hit by a blue ball as it exploded on him. This made Izuku struggle to continue to fly as it hit one of his wings. "Izuku, let's stay down for a while, you're hurt." Kaminari yelled out as they descended back into the water. Shoto created another huge iceberg as they landed safely on top of it. Izuku transformed back into his human form as he bad a big burn on the right side of arm. His friends looked concerned, but he told them he was okay as he took some water from his gourd, that somehow wasn't destroyed yet, and took out some water and fully healed his right arm. "So what now? I don't have any ideas to beat this thing," Shoto said. Kaminari raised his hand as he had an idea. Because neither Izuku or Shoto had a plan, they listened to his. He started telling them about his plan and they all thought that it was weird and a huge gamble. But since they don't have a better one, they went with his. Izuku dove then into the waters and transformed into his dragon form. He started swimming the waters in search of the whale. When he found it, he immediately swam towards it as the whale was running away from him. They played a game of cat and mice until Izuku finally caught up with it. He then used all of his strength and placed the whale up on its shoulder and started swimming up into the surface, carrying the creature. The whale slapped him with its tail to let it go, but he endured the pain for the plan to become successful. When he reached up the surface, he threw him high up into the air. Shoto and Kaminari saw them and ready to attack. Izuku launched a hydro-vortex blast at the whale, as Kaminari sent 1,000,000 volts lightning, and Shoto sent hellfire flames. The attacks crashed on the whale as all three mixed together. Their attacks mixing with one another created a huge explosion, as the whale was caught in the center. When the explosion subsided, they saw the whale fall and then stayed afloat on its back as it was now defeated. Kaminari and Shoto made a fist bump and cheered as they were standing on the iceberg together. Izuku, on the other hand, was a bit extra, and decided to climb on top of the whale and roared triumphantly as they defeated the whale. Izuku then opened the whale's mouth and saw the pearl hidden inside. He took it out and showed it to his friends. Back in Umi's cave, there she was observing all of them. She saw that they all defeated their trials successfully, and they proved to her that they have indeed improved and that they're stronger than they were before. You all have survived, heroes in training. As from what I can see, as long as you have each other and continue on supporting one another, nothing will stand in your way. She said to herself as a gentle smile made its way on her face. Having a sense of pride as he saw that her students have indeed sprouted into trees that even withstand the harshest calamities that the world has to offer. The trial by water has ended. You all have passed. Third POV. Since we last saw our protagonists, they were undergoing the trial by water exam that Umi had created for them. It is an exam for the protagonists, to prove that they have indeed improved during their training with Umi. They had to fight a pirate captain and his skeleton crew, survive enormous fish beast with razor-sharp teeth, and defeat a whale that can summon storms and massive waves. They all passed and have proven to Umi that they have improved greatly. By the time that they had managed to retrieve the pearls, the exam ended and a door appeared out of nowhere. The door was colored with a blue and white hue. It had doorknob and a hole where the keyhole should be. They placed the pearl in the hole of the doorknob and it opened, revealing Umi's cave where she was waiting for them. It came to a surprise that they had defeated their challenges all at the same time, since they all entered Umi's cave all together. All of them looked extremely exhausted and were like dogs. Some of them had their costumes torn and ripped, while some had scratches, bruises, and a lot of injury. Umi congratulated them all with a warm smile and told them that they did a wonderful job, to which they groaned in response. Umi then told them to go home and to rest since they all had a long day, not to mention that the sports festival was near. She opened a portal leading to their way back home. Umi bid them all a farewell while they just waved tiredly and went through the portal. No one spoke to one another when they got back, they just quietly walked the pathway out of the forest. They bid each other goodbye as they got to the station. When Izuku and Hitoshi got back home, their two dads were extremely worried since it was almost 7 in the evening. When the couple heard the sound of the front door opening, they rushed to their kids to scolded them for being late. When they saw their kids, they had shocked faces. They both looked extremely tired, even more so for Hitoshi since his eye bags became darker than they usually were. Hisashi and Shoyuta ran to them and gave them hugs when they closed the front door. What happened? Why do you all look like you fought monsters? And why are you wearing your costumes? And what happened to your costumes? Hisashi asked in lightning speed, accidentally using his quirk as Shoyuta covered his mouth and erased his quirk. Explain what happened, problem children. Shoyuta said as he was glaring at them in an intimidating manner. We had to do Umi's exam. It was so that to prove to her if we really did improved after the 2 weeks training with her. Izuku in a slow and tired voice. They then explained to them what they had to go through from battling sea creature to gathering pearls. They explained that Umi was the one that told them to bring their costumes just for the exam. Hisashi and Shoyuta nodded in understanding and felt extremely bad and at the same time proud of them. Luckily, Hisashi made katsudon for dinner and Izuku was extremely happy after a very tiring day. Both Aizawas ate their meals like it was the last thing they'll eat on Earth as their foods disappeared in a manner in minutes. They both had satisfied stomachs in the end. After that, they went to sleep in an instant after laying down on their beds. The next day, the day before the sports festival, they all were still extremely tired. All of the Izuku squad got to school and looked sleep-deprived as they sat down on their seats in their classroom. Class 1A took note of this and asked them why they looked so tired, to which they shrugged it off as training. When class started, most of them fell asleep as they can't help but close their eyes during class. All of them slowly fell asleep, leaving Momo on her own. She fought to stay awake and take notes but fell asleep during ectoplasm's math class. In the heroics class, they all had to wear their P uniforms since their hero costumes were greatly damaged. They only had their support gears on. Power Loader got extremely mad at them since they promised that they won't destroy their costumes and they did exactly that. And after class ended, They were all called to 𝗍𝗂's office. He asked them why they all looked so tired because their teachers were complaining, and they answered that they were training for the next day's sports festival. 𝗍𝗂 asked who they all were training from, and Izuku told him that they were training with 𝗵𝗃, to which caught his attention. He asked how they were being trained, and they answered him with what 𝗵𝗃 had them trained to improve with. 𝗍𝗂 looked interested since all 11 of them have been excelling on their heroics class for the past 2 weeks, the day they started to train with 𝗵𝗃. 𝗍𝗂 dismissed them all and told them good luck on tomorrow's sports festival, to which they thanked him. When they exited, they heard 𝗍𝗂 laugh maniacally as he had a new bright idea. This made them all a bit concerned but shrugged it off and decided to ignore it and just go home. They all slept early for them to be ready for the big day tomorrow. Now it is time for the sports festival to commence. It was early in the morning that Izuku and Hitoshi woke up and were filled with energy and determination for the sports festival. They did some push-ups and a couple of exercises to rejuvenate their body for them to be ready. They got up and exited their rooms and were delighted with the scent of their papa's delicious breakfast. Their parents were already downstairs in the dining room, preparing for their meals. They saw their papa making breakfast and their dad chugging a cup of black coffee. They got in their seats as Hitoshi made a cup of coffee for himself as well and chugged it like his dad. Hisashi and Izuku always teased the two of them since they were acting the same with them sleeping anywhere at any time and the fact that they both love coffee. Hisashi served them chocolate chip pancaked with chocolate syrup and berries on the side as their breakfast. They ate them and complimented their papa for the delicious breakfast. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 then told them to get ready since they need to be early before crowds of people come before them. It was a given that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 didn't like people, much a crowd because they're loud and annoying in his opinion. The two got ready and headed out of their house and into their car where their parents were already waiting for them. They then drove to UA and saw that a crowd was already forming and they immediately parked and head inside to avoid the media. Because of the recent attack that took place at USJ 3 weeks ago, a lot of people criticized UA for still holding the sports festival. Because of this, UA invited over 100 of pro heroes all over Japan as security if ever an attack is to occur during the event. Heroes ranging from 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗃, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, to the number 2 hero Endeavor. To say the least, UA beefed up their security like they promised and the event was now 5 times more secure compared to past sports festival events. Izuku and Hitoshi made their way to Class 1A's waiting room and saw that most of their classmates were already there. Everyone greeted them and they all looked pretty excited and pumped. They passed by Uraraka, Hira, Tiu, Kendo, and Kodai, and saw that Uraraka was punching the sky with his fist and telling them to do their best. They walked to their own group and saw that they were all there and changing into their P uniforms, so that it will be fair. They waved at them and they waved back. Katsuki approached Izuku and gave him a warm kiss on the cheeks as this made him a bit flustered as their friends snickered at them for flirting. They changed and were waiting for the sports festival to officially start. But unexpectedly, Shoto approached Izuku. Izuku, from what I could tell, you're a very strong student and a worthy rival for me, because of this I want to defeat you during this event. Shoto declared as others gasped. They all looked at Izuku to see what his reaction was, and saw that he had a smirk on his face. Thanks for the compliment I guess, but I won't be easily defeated Shoto. Let's see who will win this. He stated as stretched his arm for a handshake and Shoto grabbed his hand and shook it, sealing their rivalry. What do you extras mean that you'll win? I'm winning this sport festival I'm winning this. Katsuki declared as he was having stomping his foot on the ground childishly. Well, let's just see about that. But whoever wins this, we all must still remember that we should do our very best and try to win. Even if the odds are against us, we shouldn't let it bring us down. So, let's all just have some fun today and do our very best. Izuku said, trying to give everyone a pep talk. They all felt inspired by his little speech and it raised up all of their confidences. They all clapped for him and he felt a little embarrassed as he scratched the back of his neck. Dude, that was such a manly speech. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 commented as he wiped a few tears off his eyes. Yeah bro. So inspiring. So manly. Kirishima added doing the same. Izuku then felt his phone buzzed as he looked to see that his dad texted him and said that the sports festival was about to begin. Okay, Everyone, Dad just texted me that the event is about to start and we need to head on to the stadium. Now let's get out there and show them what we got. Everyone then cheered and raised their fist up in the air as the sports festival was about to officially begin. 33rd POV. Get ready, audience. 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃 said, screaming into the mic as the crowd shouted in excitement. It's the high school fighting ground that you all love. Everybody, the UA Sports Festival is about to begin. He screamed as the crowd roared in cheers. Many citizens and heroes came to watch the long-awaited sports festival event that is broadcasted all over Japan. But not only Japan, but also the whole world, as many come to watch this glorious event. Many heroes came for the heightened security that UA imposed on after the recent attack that took place on USJ 3 weeks ago. While many came for this reason, there is also another, as this is a chance for pros to scout students to their agencies. Being scouted by pro heroes is an important goal for students that are participating in the sports festival event. Now, let's welcome the first-year students. 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃 announces as the first-year students enter the arena. Although they were just attacked by villains during their first week of school, they overcame them and defeated them all with heart and minds of steel. The hero course, Class 1A, the crowd started going wild as Class 1A made their way inside the arena. Izuku looked around and saw the sea of people that were waving and pumping their fist in the air. The excitement can be seen in all of their faces. He couldn't help but smile and wave back to the people. He couldn't help but excited as well. Whoa, Izuku. You're really excited, huh? Mina commented as Izuku nodded his head. Of course. We've been training for weeks with Umi just for this and we're finally here. Izuku said as he had a bright smile on. His classmates squinted their eyes as his smile was too bright for their eyes to see without protection. Next, the class that doesn't have much attention yet, but are just chock full of talent. Let's give it up for Hero Course, Class 1B. 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃 announces as the class made their way into the arena. And next are the General Course, Class C, D. They made their way inside as a familiar blonde had a mad expression as she made her way inside the arena. 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃 then announced the remaining classes, which consists the support course classes F, G, and H, and lastly the management course classes I, J, and K. I am your commentator, 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃. And with me is Eraserhead. Hisashi announced as Shoyuta groaned in the mic annoyingly after being dragged by him at a place he didn't want to be in. Looks like Dad was dragged by Papa to the commentator box. Izuku said as Hitoshi chuckled. Now, everyone, please meet the first-year chief referee. It's the 18-plus pro hero, Midnight. Midnight then got up on the stage as a crowd of men were at awe with her revealing costume. May I call on the student representative of Class 1A of the hero course? Izuku Yagi. Midnight shouted as everyone looked at Izuku, who had a confused face. Wait me. Izuku said as he pointed on himself as Midnight nodded. Just go, you nerd. Katsuki said as he pushed Izuku forward. Izuku looked a bit shaken since it will be his first time to make a speech in such a huge crowd. He looked behind him and saw all of his classmates encouraging him and were giving thumbs-ups. This gave Izuku enough courage to walk up on stage and grab the mic to give a short speech. Hello everyone. I pledge to do my best, regardless of me winning this event or not. I hope that all of you that are here to watch this event will see how bright and hopeful the future of heroics will be. Watch, as we are all merely seedlings as of now, but in the future we will sprout into trees that will withstand the harshest calamities of this world. I also hope that you all will enjoy our performance for today. Thank you very much. Izuku bowed before finishing his speech. The audience then gave a roaring cheer and thunderous claps for the speech that he beautifully composed on the spot. He looked at his classmates and saw them all cheering for him as well. He got down of the stage. As his friends gave him hugs for a well-thought-out speech that gave them the inspiration that they need. What a marvelous and youthful speech. Oh, it gets me so turned on. Midnight shouted because she didn't have a mic, and the students looked quite shocked and confused at her choice of words. Now, let's get this started with the first event. A hologram screen then appeared as it started choosing the first main event. After a few seconds, it landed on the obstacle race. The first event will be an obstacle race. All 11 classes will participate in this first event. The course will be approximately 4 kilometers around this stadium. You can do whatever you want as long as you stay on course. Now, get to your places. Midnight said, finishing her instructions as the students made their way in front of a large gate. All of the students were in front of the large gate. Izuku did a couple of stretches before the first event started and made time to calm himself down from his nerves by breathing in and out. Then it began the obstacle race. The students ran through the narrow pathway as they heard the signal that officially began the first event. The narrow pathway was the first obstacle, as many were bumping on each other and pushing one another just to make it out. Shoto realized that this was the first obstacle as he used his ice and froze everyone in place. His attack made him snag the first place title. As he looked back, he saw that most of his classmates escaped his frozen track. He saw Momo made a bow staff to propel herself, Mina using her acid to skate through the ice, and Katsuki using his explosions to fly. Nice try, Todoroki-san, but I'm winning this, Momo said as she started running on her feet, trying to catch up to him. You half and half. I'll kill you, Katsuki said as his eyes were burning red like flames. Shoto kept running as he didn't want them to catch up to him. Only then he realized that he didn't saw Izuku anywhere. There he saw a mass of water forming a few meters in front of him. It was Izuku. He had a smug smile on his face as he saluted a goodbye to Shoto as he ran as fast as he can on the course. Izuku already anticipated Shoto freezing the whole course and make him take the lead. So, after his attack, he turned himself into water and passed all of the students in front of him as he slithered his way in front. He caught up to Shoto eventually as he slid through the ice as a puddle of water. As Izuku was running, he felt a gush of wind beside him as he dodges to the side. He looked up to see that it was a punch from his 0-pointer back in the UA entrance exam. His eyes widened as the skyscraper-tall robots were blocking his way, as there were dozens of them. Now, this is what you call an obstacle. We call this the Robo Inferno. Present Mike announces to the audience as they were cheering wildly for the students participating. Izuku smiled, seeing the giant robots in front of him. He turned his arms into water and ran towards the robots while dodging their fists and missiles. Izuku made his arms into drills with a frozen point as he jumped high into the air and spun his body around the robot's head, making a hole through the robot. The robot then fell on the ground. Did you all see that? As expected of the student representative, Hisashi said proudly as the crowd cheered again. Shoto used his ice again and froze most of the robots in place as he continued on his track. Katsuki propelled himself towards the robots and exploded their faces, while catching up to the others in front of him. Kaminari started rubbing his hands together as static electricity started sparking. He then shot a high-voltage electricity at the robot that made it short-circuit and deactivate. By this time, the students in front have all made it to the next obstacle. Now, time for the next course, the pit. If you fall, you are out. Hisashi commentated loudly in Shuta's ear as he told him to shut up. Izuku made his way to the pit obstacle and saw how deep it was if you fell down. He saw that everyone was catching up to him as he did the unexpected. He suddenly jumped at the edge of the pit and started falling down. Izuku! Katsuki shouted as he witnessed his boyfriend's jump. But suddenly he saw him running up in the air, as if he was running up on stairs. He widened his eyes and questioned how it was possible. He then took a closer look and saw that every step he made a ripple in the air as if he was running on water. How is this possible? How can he walk on air? Hisashi questioned through the mic. Izuku can control water, even the water in the air. I'm guessing that he's controlling the water in the air and made them act like platforms that only he could walk on, making the illusion of him walking on air. Shoyuta said as everyone awed at amazement. What a terrific idea. But wait, looks like more are catching up to Izuku. Hisashi said as the audience looked intensely at the hologram screen. Izuku looked behind him and saw that Katsuki and Shoto were catching up to him. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was flying in the air with his explosions, and Shoto was skating in his ice. Not only them but the rest of the Izu squad as well. Mina raised the viscosity and lowered the solubility of her acid and used the tightrope as a zipline. 𝗳𝗏 was using his tapes to pass the obstacle, and Momo made a grappling hook. Hitoshi shocked everyone as he was running on the tightrope like a ninja from an anime. "Don't think that you'll beat me, Izuku," Shoto said as he was now beside Izuku. "Don't forget about me, ya nerd," Katsuki shouted as sounds of explosions can be heard. "I'm winning this, you too," Izuku declared as he ran faster in the air. Soon they reached the end of the course and were soon reaching the next and final course before the finish line. And folks, we have reached the final obstacle. Be careful and be cautious, because this is a minefield. Hisashi shouted through the mic. Izuku looked and saw the mine-littered ground. He used his Tai Chi skills and tried to surpass this obstacle. He then heard explosions from behind him and saw both Katsuki and Shoto. That is when he made haste. The both of them caught up with Izuku and were starting to get physical with one another. Katsuki started to use his quirk and exploded both Shoto and Izuku. They both dodged and retaliated with their own attacks. They were all far in the lead and were fighting for the title of first place. While they were having their own brawl, behind them, they could hear the sounds of mines being set off. Tetsu and Kirishima made the bold move and started running through the course, not even minding the explosions because they were unaffected because of their quirks. But Momo had a genius plan to hinder the other students and make her take the lead. "Sorry everyone, but I want to win," Momo said confidently as she made multiple smoke bombs. She started throwing them all over the course as they exploded and out came pitch black smoke, blinding the students. She, however, was wearing goggles that made her see heat signatures, and made her see through the smoke and made her able to see the mines from below the ground. She then made her way through the minefield. Others were annoyed by the smoke, but 𝗲𝗏 was unfazed. She inserted her earphone jacks to the ground and sent small vibrations that made her locate all of the mines in front of her. She then ran through the minefield, memorizing all of the mines that are on her pathway to the other side of the course. Izuku, Katsuki, and Shoto were now getting bare the finish line as 𝗳𝗏 were battling one another to snag the first place title. Look at here, folks. We have out top 3 contenders near the finish line. Izuku Aizawa, Shoto Todoroki, and Katsuki Bakugo. Who will win? Hisashi said, making the crowd even more excited and made them cheer loudly. Izuku was in the middle of Shoto and Katsuki as they were attacking him with his quirk. Knowing his weakness to heat and fire, Shoto used his flames to evaporate Izuku and Katsuki doing the same with his explosions. Izuku was struggling as he was starting to stagger behind the both of them. Izuku was now behind the other two, as Katsuki and Shoto were now focusing on one another. Little do they know that Izuku was far from giving up. Izuku gathered all of the water in the air and absorbed them in his body, regaining some of his moisture back. He then turned his arms into water claws and started stretching them towards the two in the lead. Katsuki and Shoto felt something grab them from behind and were suddenly thrown to the side walls of the tunnel. They felt a water splash on their bodies and quickly froze into ice as it trapped them to the walls. They looked to see that it was Izuku as he passed right by them. Katsuki immediately blew the ice off him and began to propel himself to Izuku with his explosions. Shoto melted the ice and started skating on his own ice using his right side. Izuku didn't look back as he was now using his water arms to increase his mobility, clawing the ground to reach the finish line. Sounds of explosions and ice were behind him as Shoto and Katsuki were catching up to him. Look at this, folks. They are neck and neck. Who will win this? Who will win the first event? Will it be Izuku, Shoto, or Katsuki? Hisashi screamed out in excitement as the crowd were holding their breaths, waiting for one of them to reach the finish line. And the winner is